They guided down so nicely. I'd like to call back to order this meeting of the Issaquah School Board. The school board was in executive session and we ended at 6:35. And so with that, we will move on to our regular agenda. Want to get started at this point with our public input. And I know we have some special guests and visitors to get us started this evening. So I want to invite up Ellen Jarvinen and Jen Fitzgerald to kick us off. Oh, Director Gallinger has stepped away. He will be back with the board later this evening. Gohan, is your mic on? There's a little light. Yep, perfect.
Jen Fitzgerald, Administrative Assistant to the Executive Director of High Schools, Andrea Zier. Thanks for having us. Every spring, one senior from Issaquah High School, Liberty High School, Skyline High School, and Gibbs-Sedek attend a designated board meeting officially inviting our school board to the ISD June commencement ceremonies. This year, in an effort to personalize our invitation and align with our district mission and ends, the high school staff were asked to nominate a graduating senior who embodies the criterion of an ends randomly assigned to them. So among the selected recipients here tonight, students were recognized for their ambitions, passions, work ethic, service, leadership, problem-solving and communication skills, and insatiable curiosity. Issaquah High School Senior Class Advisor Representative Ellen Jarvinen is here to introduce these nominees.
Thank you for the opportunity to recognize some of our seniors tonight. From Issaquah High School, representing Ends 2 Part 1 Academics and Foundations, Isabella Mitchell is a natural leader, inquisitive, and excels academically. Outside of school, Isabella is involved in clubs, FCCLA and others, book club, I believe, and is a competitive rower, training for 4 to 6 hours a day. Bella is passionate about the environment, developing a project for FCCLA regarding ecology. As editor of the yearbook this year, she is one of the best problem solvers I've ever had. She understands the importance of community and how yearbook has fit into that, looking to the past for tradition, culture, and guidance, and to the future to imagine how the book will be received in 20 years. Isabella is an all-around amazing young adult. Isabella Mitchell.
Hello all. I plan to attend Oregon State University next year. I'll be attending the Honors College as well as the College of Ocean, Earth, and Atmospheric Sciences. I plan to major in environmental sciences with a minor in either policy or sustainability. I also have gotten the privilege to get to compete with their D1 rowing team there. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Next, from Liberty High School, representing Ends 2 Part 2 Academics and Foundations, Sydney Kincaid is a person with wide-ranging talents and a love for analytical problem solving. To give you an idea of the diverse range of talents, Sydney is an accomplished musician, involved in drama, present in a large range of AP classes, including every math offering. Wow. And is learning AP Calculus BC this year, despite not being able to attend the class due to scheduling problems. On top of all of this, Sydney is a National Merit finalist. To talk more personally of Sydney's insatiable curiosity, Sydney and their friends pose abstract and complicated puzzles of questions to teachers and each other frequently. Sydney keeps their mind sharp and engaged once finished with class content by thinking about mathematical puzzles for fun. Sydney is fascinating, intelligent, and a talented student who is an excellent choice for this honor. Sydney Kincaid.
Thank you for having me. I plan to attend Four-Year University and pursue a degree in music. Thank you.
That's the math. Math and music. Next up, we have from Skyline High School, representing Ends 3 Civic Engagement. We actually have two people, Luciana Calindres Burgos and Sonia Kapoor. They have both been involved in class council throughout their 4 years of high school, both in appointed and elected positions. Over the past 4 years, they have demonstrated respect for their fellow council members, classmates, faculty, and advisors. They understand the impact their choices as leaders have on the school community, especially in their roles their senior year. As a school with a diverse culture, they continually seek to make connections by asking questions, seeking inclusivity, and being open to the ideas of others. They are cognizant of the fact the choices they make as leaders have a collective impact on the greater school and surrounding community. Luciana Colindres Burgos.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. In the fall, I plan on studying bioengineering in the Honors College at the University of Washington in pursuit of becoming a doctor. Thank you.
And then we have Sonia Kapoor.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. This fall, I plan to go to nursing school at Seattle U, as well as being part of the Honors College in hopes to pursue becoming a nurse practitioner.
And finally, from Gibson Eck, representing management and personal awareness, we are nominating Beckett Hobbs because we believe that he not only exemplifies Gibson Eck's mission and values, but he also has ambitious future goals related to his passions and has developed a professional and cohesive depth of knowledge in the film industry. He balances his commitment to his education, his soccer career, and his film projects gracefully, while also serving as a leader in the Gibson Eck community and beyond. All of us at Gibson Eck are so excited for him to continue to innovate and grow on his journey after graduation. Beckett Hobbs.
Thank you very much for that. Next year, I plan on studying at Emerson College in the honors program, studying filmmaking, hopefully developing my small production company so that way we can produce our own short films and maybe make it big. I also plan on selling my feature-length screenplay next year. I'm hoping to get some meetings this year with some production companies and just hoping to finish that out next year. So on behalf of the 2023 ISD class, senior class, it is our honor to invite you to our commencement ceremonies.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. I love the awards and congratulations to each of you. We're really excited to have the opportunity to be a part of your big milestone. Thank you. That's a good way to start off the evening. That was awesome. Okay, so we will continue our conversation with public comment. We have some folks who have signed up here in the room. I'll start with folks in the room and then I will move to individuals who are on Zoom. This is an opportunity for the board to receive public statements on items not listed in the meeting agenda for public comment. If you have a point of view or specific agenda item, I ask that you hold it until I request comments during that particular agenda item. Public comment time is not intended as a time to raise issues unique to a particular student, staff member, or administrator. Rather, it's a time to provide your insights on issues more generally and of a wider concern. As a general rule, the board will not respond to public comment. I ask that you begin your comments by clearly stating your name, your school attendance area. Please limit your comments to 2 minutes. We will have a timer. The board neither endorses nor censors any opinions expressed during public comment. Please keep all comments civil and respectful and avoid personal attacks on others. The audience should refrain from making comments or engaging in applause, but feel free to wave your hands in support of the speaker. Excuse me, I have 3 folks who are signed up in the room. The first person is Meg Sloan, if you'd like to come up. And again, please state your name and your attendance area.
Hi, my name is Meg Sloan. I have a 10th grader who's assigned to Skyline, but it goes to Gibson Eck. And can I go there too? But I am speaking today about IEP and the IEP and 504 process. I would like to see the district offer training to parents new to the IEP or 504 processes, as well as those who have recently joined our school district. This would include training on how to navigate the special education process and how to be an effective member of our children's educational team. The IEP process is complicated. It often makes me wish that I had a law degree. The text is dense and procedural and not easy to understand. And for those of you who have not experienced this as a parent, an IEP meeting is a highly emotional event for parents. It is really hard to listen to the ways your child struggles in school. I bring this up because many parents I have spoken with often feel like a deer in the headlights at these meetings from both the material covered and the emotion-packed nature of the meeting. Parent training by the district and for the district would support the teaching staff as well as the parents. Parents could have a clearer understanding of their role in the process. IEP and 504 meetings could run smoother and be timelier with less confusion and questions by the parents. And maybe mine could actually get done in the time allotted for them. Sorry, teachers. I want to thank you all for your consideration and commitment and time to make our school district better.
Thank you for your input. Next up, I have Michelle Whitehead.
My name is Michelle Whitehead. I'm a parent of a 10-year-old daughter with special needs. My home school is Grand Ridge Elementary. I believe it is long past time for our special education system to move into the digital age. We need an online portal or dashboard similar to the MyChart interface used by medical providers to streamline the management of IEPs, 504 plans, child find, evaluations, and all special education documents. This online dashboard would house all essential records, making it easier for families to access and understand their child's educational history. It would automate much of the manual work, eliminating the need for extensive record keeping and reducing the burden of proof on both parents and district staff. Not only would this portal increase transparency and efficiency, but it would also ensure that every email between families and district employees is stored and protected. It would send notifications for important events such as triennial evaluations, annual IEPs, and help in scheduling meetings. Moreover, this digital system would benefit parents with disabilities who need accommodations themselves. While the initial cost and effort to implement this system may be significant, the long-term benefits of a more inclusive, equitable, and efficient special education dashboard system far outweigh the cost barriers. In conclusion, let us finally automate the special education process. Let us come together to make our special education system more accessible and user-friendly for all families, ensuring a better future for our children. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you for your input. Next, I have Larry White.
Again, Larry White. My boys graduated from Issaquah High School. So if you look at the video from last board meeting, you'll notice a disclaimer indicating that the video was altered to meet YouTube's terms of service. This is because I posted on this podium right here a rather vulgar racial slur. It was considered racially insensitive content. A slur which each and every day is used by students at Issaquah Middle School and high school. A slur which a student representative from Little High School expressed concern about because of its rampant use there as well. These students use this slur with each other, and sometimes they also direct them at staff members. I've witnessed it. I've been the target of it. So why is this slur, or any other slur for this matter, allowed in the Issaquah schools? Don't our kids deserve better? The district has a video entitled The Power of Language, dealing with the specific slur, which is supposed to be shown to each and every middle and high school student. In this video, Dr. Latisha Levy indicates that that slur should not be used in the school setting. So several times I've been here and I've heard, especially Donna Hood, talk about the districts trying to recruit minority candidates, especially teachers. But I'll ask Ms. Hood, do you really think minority would choose a hostile work environment where any given day they can be the target of a slur? Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Do we have any other comment in the room? Do we have any on Zoom? Okay, we have Tori McBride. If you can turn your video on and unmute. Hopefully we'll be able to see you shortly. There we go.
Hopefully you can hear me.
You can. Please go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, ISD Board, Superintendent, and others in attendance this evening. My name is Tori McBride, and I'm the parent of 2 students who attend Issaquah High School. Professionally, I'm the manager of the school-based mental health program at Swedish and have had the privilege of watching the partnership between Swedish and the district grow over the last 9 years. I'm here on behalf of Swedish and the school-based mental health team, since there was mention of our program and contracted mental health services during the budget discussions in the last school board meeting. I want to recognize the difficult budget decisions that you face and thank you for your continued commitment to the mental health needs of students in the district. The obvious impact of the school-based mental health program has been to provide accessible mental health counseling services to students. But in addition, we've connected countless families and guardians to resources, provided consultation to school counselors, administrators, and staff, and offered support and input in supporting students' mental health needs at the district level. This has included providing additional counseling support to school buildings impacted by crises, helping to reduce the effects of trauma, supporting the student threat assessment process, and providing expertise in crisis situations and crisis assessments, among many other things. Swedish and Issaquah School District's relationship started in January of 2014, and over the years, our partnership has grown, and we continue to examine and refine the services we provide and how we work together in an integrated model of support to meet students' social emotional health needs. I'm proud of the mental health support available to students in the district and that other districts and community providers have contacted us to learn about our successes and unique partnership. Swedish remains dedicated to meeting the mental health needs of students, and we look forward to continued conversations with the district regarding our partnership. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Was there anyone else? Okay, thank you. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank each of you for attending our meeting, sharing your point of view. The board appreciates the comments made at our meetings and through email. While we are not able to respond to comments at the moment in the meeting, rest assured that we've heard your voices and we'll take your comments into consideration. Thank you. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of the consent agenda.
I move the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
Thank you. The consent agenda is a meeting management tool whereby the board is able to pass multiple items in one motion. Consent agenda items have been reviewed by the board prior to the meeting. Any board member can remove an item from the consent agenda and place it on the regular agenda as well. Thank you for that. So with that, I'll move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against? No. Consent agenda passes. Okay, we'll move on to the establishment of the regular agenda. Superintendent, are there any changes to the regular agenda?
There are no changes.
Thank you. Okay, with that, our first item on the regular agenda is a review of the work study. The board had a work study earlier this evening. It was focused on having a deeper diving conversation on the ongoing development of strategic plan for the district. This now is an opportunity for members of the board to share any learnings or insights. Who would like to get us started?
Well, I'll just start by saying I appreciate all the work that's going into this very iterative process of developing the strategic plan. The refinements are just getting better and better as we all work together to solidify this plan. I thought we had a really good conversation and really helped us, dig deeper than the pillars. The pillars all looked good. And then we were able to have good discussions about what different parts of the goals and strategies and what they meant. And the real nuances of, for anything, what do the words mean, right? And what's the intent behind them? So I imagine there'll be some more potential changes coming out of it. And I'm really looking forward to us moving forward, especially with our concept of using a resolution to memorialize the board's support behind the overall strategic plan.
Yeah, I felt like it was a good opportunity to kind of get in and really think about what the goals meant and what felt right to each person and what things could just be tweaked a little bit. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of work behind it. I appreciate all the work that everyone has done in putting it together. And yeah, it was a good opportunity for the board to get to interact with the staff about the goals in the plan.
Well, for me, it was another step in this iterative process that we've had. And so we've had chances to talk before. The community has been reached out to, staff has been reached out to, students have been reached out to. And I think that's an important piece. And for me, I think it prioritizes how to get to our ends. And that has really been something we put together these ends before I've been on the board. So, well over a decade. And there hasn't been a real plan for how to get movement forward. So we monitor it, but I think, the point of a strategic plan is to be strategic. What are the big priority areas to get real movement towards your goals? And so I think I've really appreciated that there was, after addressing so many of the stakeholders, there was still such alignment between what those priority areas should be. And to really kind of see how that worked out in that process has been really helpful. And I think for me, I'm looking forward to the next step of really adopting a resolution, and that shows our support of the plan. It is still the superintendent's plan, but we want to be able to say that we're supportive of these areas and this focus and these priorities. I appreciated Director Gallinger. I'm not trying to say Harlan and Gallinger at the same time. Director Gallinger really bringing a solution of how can we integrate the priorities in the strategic plan into our work. And a longstanding issue has been we have never monitored E1 because the mission just seems too big and huge and unwielding. How do you even measure that? And to be able to say, well, that's the strategic plan. And so I really appreciate that idea of how do we still, as a policy governance board, monitor the work of the strategic plan in a way that's meaningful. So I thought that was an elegant solution to that he's not here to share.
Hopefully he's noting that. Superintendent, anything you'd like to add?
I would just like to say thank you to many, many people, to the board for your engagement in this process. A year ago today, you announced your next superintendent. So this is an anniversary of some sort. And during the entire interview process, there was a request and interest in how can we bring together a strategic plan under a policy governance model, and do it in a way that is thoughtful and engages the community and gets lots of input. So I want to say thank you for setting that charge out to the team and to me. I would also like to thank our cabinet, who has put a tremendous amount of work in moving along the various components of this iterative process. And that's been hugely helpful. We've had a ton of time that we've reallocated to do that work. Many of our administrators and our community has stepped up in so many ways. Our students, our staff, our families, and many members of the community have also been weighing in. And I feel like it's a really good, helpful way to re-engage just on the purpose of education coming out of the past few years. And I just have really appreciated all of the thought that has gone into every single step of the way.
Thank you. I think it's a healthy conversation. We got into the specifics tonight about what we see, what we recognize, what we believe will help move the needle forward into, a great to greater story for the district. So I think that is phenomenal progress this evening. And we'll keep talking about the now I'm combining finalization and formalization. Finalization of the strategic plan, and then how we will memorialize it, likely through resolution as we go forward. Thank you. So the next topic we had up is a report out and adoption of our school improvement plans. How about we start that conversation with a motion as well?
I move the board approve the 2023 school improvement plans for each ISD school as presented.
Second.
Thank you. So over the course of the last month, the board and members of administration met with principals from each school at all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high, to discuss detailed data sets from each school and better understand the plans in place for improvement in each of those buildings. So again, this is our opportunity to talk about what we heard in those conversations. Superintendent, is there anything else you or the team wanted to present in summary in this process?
I just want to say thank you again to our team, our executive directors overseeing our schools, and all of our principals and their teams for the tremendous amount of work to prepare for and reflect, and to identify areas where there are bright spots, where there are areas of opportunity for growth, and to really reflect on some of the alignment between that and our ends overall and our mission moving forward. So I just want to say thank you. And we do intend to, have some follow-up with a variety of set of questions that did come forward in the near future.
Okay, wonderful. And maybe what I'll do before that is just check and see if there's any public input on this topic before we have our discussion. There was materials from all those report outs attached to the agenda. So is there any public input on this agenda item in the room? Okay. Any on Zoom? No. Oh, thank you. I didn't turn quick enough to see the head motion. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so how about we then turn that conversation to the board, and again, who'd like to start the discussion?
I always have to say, I really appreciate the time that the leaders take, the principals take to come in and meet with the board and talk about their schools. And I appreciate how fast they talk to try to get in all the great things that are happening at their schools, and they only have 10 minutes, and it's really, really hard. But I also like it when we do this grouping of all the elementaries, all the middle, all the high schools, because it's really interesting to see the interactions among the principals. And sometimes the board has school-specific questions. Sometimes we just have general questions. Well, how does this really work at middle school or at high school? And it's really interesting to see the different leaders work together and how things are different at their schools, how they're the same. But it's the only time the board really gets to take a deep dive into what's happening on the ground in the schools. And I just really appreciate the experience.
Right. It's a feel good because you hear from the administrators their deep work to look at every student and make sure that the students are getting what they need. There's a real focus on helping students catch up any missed work along the way coming out of the pandemic. I know there's a lot more work going on using the iReady type assessment so we can have a better sense of where students are and methods to help them get to the standard that they need to be at the proper stage. And so I really always appreciate, the excitement these principals have about their schools and their students and wanting to help their students not only achieve academic success at meeting standards, but to have that overall sense of well-being and community within their schools, and that the school is a, great place to be for all involved. It's a good conversations.
I do think from the conversations that a lot of good work is happening in our buildings, a lot of good focus, good to hear more about MTSS, the multi-tiered systems of support, and how are they being integrated into the schools? How is that impacting students and staff interactions with students? I do think, though, the data speaks for itself and there is still work to go. The disproportionality in passing of state assessments is still an ongoing issue. Graduation rate disparities. So there's work that needs to be done. And, we want success for all students. And that really is kind of our mission and vision. And so it's good to be talking about that. And especially at the high school levels, I felt like there was a lot of intentional thought in how they're addressing things this year. And, I'm really hoping to see some of that impact next year, really digging down on some of the ways they need to prioritize things in their system and how they're communicating out with the staff and setting different levels of expectations or different types of expectations than they have in the past. And I really felt that was, we heard that from all of the principals around that. And then, of course, I always love hearing about Gibson Neck and the success and the driving that it does throughout the entire state and nationally, where it is really an exemplary program that allows students to take full ownership of their own education. And I think we've heard about wanting to see some, that the community as a whole is truly aware of how students engage in their learning at Gibson Neck. I still think that's fuzzy and hazy and unclear how students are achieving success at Gibson Neck and in what ways they show up. And again, how are meeting that mission.
Thank you for letting me join in. I was enjoying the Skyline student visual arts exhibition. And it's really incredible to see the product of what all this work is that all our staff does to get them to that point. I will bring up this, which I bring up every year. These SIP meetings, I think how Issaquah does it is really unique and really powerful and super helpful. What the challenge is we've seen a lot of movement in our high school data, and the disproportionality, hats off to the district for the gaps that are closing and have closed, especially in special services, are African American and Hispanic students, like huge changes. What changes we don't see is in our elementary data. And that one I'm really struggling with. In those critical years of when students are learning to read, we have now, since I was a sixth grader, we have now 6 years of WACKED's data where we readily identify who are the students are going to struggle. We know that that's validated not just in our district with our data, but it's validated across our state. And so I want to know, and I want to challenge the district to think deeper and wider about how we can intervene on these students at the earliest stage. We have iReady that we talk about and we plead with I think, share out with our parents about how important it is and how valuable it is from both a formative and summative assessment. So what are we doing to actually leverage the data we have to make it easier for our teachers to do their work? Because it can't be something where it's just in addition to, because the plates for our teachers are already too full. So how do we leverage the data and the technology to be able to drive better results? Because right now, when we have a 30-point gap in performance of third grade reading in our elementary schools between our highest performing school and our lowest performing school, that's too much. And as it currently states, I can still predict based on what elementary school they go to, what the chances of them passing that third grade reading test. And that data hasn't budged over a decade, even pre, post, during pandemic. And so what I challenge that and what I hope the strategic plan does by saying we want to support schools to the highest need. We know where the needs are. it's not a surprise to any of us sitting here or to anyone who lives in our school district that we actually leverage that and say that is not acceptable anymore.
I think the couple things I would add that were, I guess, on the extreme positive end of it is just hearing the stories of return to more regular operation, regular activities within each of the buildings at every level, getting back to popcorn Fridays in the elementaries or whatever those things are like, or some of the regular occurrences in both middle and high school. And I guess that just is so great to hear that occurring in our buildings, which is wonderful. For me, I really enjoyed that we had both ACT and Echo Glen, those programs represented in the high school conversations. We really could have the wide net of program and experiences going on and understand the different successes and challenges across that wide group. And then I think in the realm of to get to some of these these entrenched areas of disproportionality, the more we can be focusing on what is going to be tangibly different in how we tackle problems and how we look at representation of all students within our middle and high school buildings, at how we attack some of the academic challenges in a way that truly has to be different to get to this final method. It's great to hear how much that is being thought of, and good to have a conversation of sharing across the buildings and learning. And so we can see that actively happening. More to do for sure, but really rich conversations and really a good use of what's a significant time commitment to dig in deep at all levels in the district. Superintendent, anything you would like to add?
Helpful pointing out on where we still need to do work and also where we've been highlighting and seeing progress. And I do agree everyone there was a trend across our building leaders across all levels to be diving back into the work of teaching and learning and moving beyond COVID. It's not that it's behind us, but it also that we're doing some things differently and we have learning there as well. So that was great. I would also like to just thank, many of our principals specifically named many support team members and departments, including teaching learning services, our equity department and family partnership department and special services for their support being side by side to improve their instructional practices.
So I know we have a couple of student reps here. I don't know if either of you have comments on this topic. You don't have to. No? Okay. Thank you. All right. So thank you for that review. We do have a motion on the floor. At this point, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. With that, the SIPs are approved. Our next agenda item is going to be student input on EL 15, which is technology. So who is up first? Are you both commenting on technology? Okay, wonderful. Come on up to the microphone, Jordan. Make sure it's on and make sure you say your name and your school, please. And then you can give your input on this EL.
Okay, is it on?
It is on.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jordan. I go to Issaquah High School, and there's only like 2 things that I found for like the technology limitations that were like kind of an issue. So the first one was that like 1 in 7 kids hasn't had the necessary technology to complete their schoolwork, and the majority of those kids are people who don't have like colored printers. And so I know that like not that long ago, I had an assignment in school where I needed a colored computer or a colored printer to finish it, and if you don't have one at your house, like none of the teachers have them and our school library doesn't. And so the next best alternative is to go to like the public library in Issaquah, which is just not an option for a lot of people. And then the other thing I wanted to cover was that the way that the rules were told to us wasn't that like universal. Like only half of the teachers told their kids, or like only half of the kids remember their teachers telling them. And then like only a third of them heard it on their SEL lesson. And like some kids didn't even know the rules until they heard it on like a poster in the hallway. And so like a more rigid system for how the teachers teach the kids the rules regarding technology would probably make it a more like beneficial system to the kids because they'd actually know like what the rules are. Yeah. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paige Ryan. I'm the other student representative from Issaquah High School. Conveniently, we're both talking about this EL. And I wanted to start off basically just what Jordan was saying. EL 15 focuses on management of technology, right? And the board is expected to provide equitable access to all students in regards to technology throughout the district. And it's also stated in the EL that they're supposed to provide access to advanced technologically rigorous courses for students. So those are two things that I kind of wanted to highlight a little bit. So Jordan actually completed a survey at Issaquah High School that was sent out through the librarian. And I believe that had over 200 responses. And it was a multiple choice, and also it gave the option for students to type in their own answers if they didn't think the multiple choice really represented what they wanted to say. And through that, we got a lot of good feedback about technology. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, but that was what Jordan was referencing for the most part when he was referencing student opinions. He got a ton of opinions through that, which I thought was great. I decided to do a little bit of a different approach so we could get multiple perspectives from our school. So I talked specifically to teachers and students. I did a random sampling survey. So I was in the Commons at the beginning of the day, which is when most Issaquah High School students are present. And I walked up to a ton of different students and asked them their thoughts on the technology. And considering the beginning of this year, we had the one-to-one, which was new to our school. A lot of people had a lot of concerns or frustrations about it, which were all valid in my opinion. A lot of them talked about how it really increased equitable access, which was amazing. And that's something that we really want to move forward with as a school district. But a lot of them were also expressing problems with the software and technology that they were provided, and specifically like speed of the software, and also what was on the computers that were given by the schools. So there are specific programs that are provided by the school that are required in order to do some schoolwork in specific classes. And a lot of the students were concerned about the fact that they had personal laptops that they would rather use just for efficiency purposes that had a lot of their stuff saved on it, that kind of thing. And they were forced to bring in those laptops on top of their school laptops in order to be able to use the software that was downloaded on those school laptops. So the biggest example and the biggest frustration I heard throughout the year was in my physics class, we used something called vernier analysis, which is basically just like a graphical analysis software. And it used to be available in classrooms because laptops were in the classrooms and they had those on there. But when we switched to one-to-one, they took those laptops out and gave them to students. And as a result, in order to be able to use that software, we had to bring in our school laptops just for that. So a lot of students were complaining about the fact that they didn't really have an option to choose getting a school laptop or getting that software on their own personal laptops, which honestly does make sense because it is kind of a hassle to have to carry two laptops around at school. And teachers were also talking about this a little bit. I got a testimony from a specific teacher who said that students should be allowed to decide for themselves whether or not they should or need a school provided laptop. Giving laptops to every student is expensive and unnecessary, and it creates more problems for teachers and staff as they have to monitor their students and ensure that they're properly using the technology. So given that and the testimonies that I received from students, I think that the one-to-one opportunity was really great and is a really great step in the right direction for equitable technology access. but a lot of students were having issues with it just because it was creating more problems in their classes than they had prior to when they had the one-to-one. And also teachers having to deal with student behavior on those laptops, which is something that is in the EL, established expectations of use of technology and maintaining in a safe environment. Those are expectations in the EL that kind of were forced onto the teachers. So those were the two main concerns that they had, but they also thought that it was a really great opportunity to be able to give those students access to this technology that they hadn't had prior to the pandemic, especially because of like Canvas and stuff, which is new. And a lot of people now use that as their main source of like schoolwork. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Again, we using that input as we continue to monitor and review each of the ELs. It's incredibly helpful to hear the real day in the life from our students, and appreciate the student reps for providing that.
Also, if you guys want to hang around 2 agenda items down, we're going to talk about the GP12, which is the student rep policy. So would be lovely to have your input.
It's in like 10 minutes.
I know, well, but they might leave.
No, I was just telling him it's only like 10 minutes. They were like, how long is 2 agenda items? Was the look on their face. That could be an hour. It'll be very quick. I'm just saying it's not long. Okay. Any more on that one? Okay. So the next agenda item is to you, superintendent, on works in progress.
Okay, great. We've had such a focus on our ends tonight as it relates to upon graduation, and then ... many of the other fill in the blank here on our ends. I had the opportunity to participate and volunteer for student exit interviews at Liberty High School. And that was yesterday. I just have a huge appreciation for the college counseling team for their organization and orchestration of preparing students and welcoming volunteers. It is a very big effort, and it was amazing. So the students that I got to speak with 5 students, and each of them had such different interests, life experiences, and post-secondary next steps and career aspirations. You can really see, I think, the board ends come to life in hearing each of the students talk about their high school and beyond plan. So a couple of things I wanted to bring forward is each student cited their family, culture, and school experiences as examples of how they're forging and why they're forging a path toward the future, ranging from multi-generational interests in dual topics such as music and science. In that vein, each of the students had a range of interests that didn't quite fit a consistent narrative, so to speak. And so you might have had someone who was focusing on music and business, or someone focusing on equestrian and finance. And those are not, they're complementary, but you might not always pair those items together. And that was pretty inspiring to see the range of our students' interests and their expertise and talents. All of the students worked in some way, shape, or form, or volunteered, and that really informed their sense of civic responsibility and life management and personal awareness. In fact, one student stated that they could basically fully fund their first year of taking courses after graduation, which was very impressive. And that's just lots of thoughtful things came out of the students that I got to speak with and hear from directly. Regarding technology and social media, I heard a comment about how on the pro side of technology and social media, this can help bring people together and make information more easily accessible for use, but it can also be harmful. And it was a very elegantly stated comment that if you wouldn't feel comfortable saying something to someone in person, don't say it in social media. That's a brilliant statement. And I said, you should restate that in all of your interviews when you move into the tech sector someday. I heard about how there's another elegant comment where in reference to a course and takeaway from a teacher is that one teacher helped me think about how I can consume information more readily and in a structured manner. So I thought that was a very nice comment. And another student talked about how personal finance really helped that student see the relevance of math in the real world. And then a nod to computer science and how these opportunities allowed that student to accelerate what they had been self-exploring during COVID, because there was a lot of at-home exploration. And so a student found a passion for coding and so forth, and that was accelerated formally back in school during computer science. So I just want to highlight some of those aspects of the incredible gifts, talents, skills, and learning and insight from our graduating 12th graders for the board and the community. And it was just pretty powerful to hear. So those are my biggest set of comments and reflections. I'll share two two other news notes about what's happening in the district. And on our breakfast pilot programs, we're holding steady with between 40 and 50 meals served daily at Issaquah Middle School and Clark Elementary. Issaquah High School is averaging closer to 20 breakfast meals per day, but the plan there is to expand the menu to include a hot breakfast sandwich, which I believe will be a very popular item. And that option will also be coming to other schools later this spring. And then secondly, just highlight some student advocacy and local grants that have helped make Skyline High School's first water bottle filling station a reality. We've heard here from that student as well. So I feel like it's a nice tie-in to see the next step there. So this past week, the school hosted a grand opening ceremony for the new filling station during lunch. And representatives from the city of Sammamish Plateau Water, and Cascade Water Alliance attended the event. The installation was made possible also thanks to a $2,000 grant awarded by the Cascade Water Alliance. And Senior Rishi Hazra, I believe is the name pronunciation, spearheaded this outreach effort and came before us as well. And there were several other supports, obviously, from the fellow ASB team members and officers and Principal Keith Hennick. So I just want to shout out that effort and reality of student advocacy and impact there. And with that, I'll just note that again, this is my anniversary of being announced to the community, and it feels like it came upon me so quickly that this 1 year mark sparks for me a series of reflections around just how grateful I am to be here and appreciate the board and the community and the team. And I feel like the team has done a tremendous job of acting upon a lot of the goals that came out of and opportunities that were expressed during the superintendent search process. And I really just want to say thank you to the team for that, because that's not one person, that's a lot of people taking on that effort. So very grateful and very reflective at this moment in time. Thanks.
Thank you for that, and happy anniversary of your announcement. Okay, so the next agenda item is our update on the Student Board Representative Program and GP 12. This will be our first discussion, and it's an opportunity to discuss any potential updates that we have. So, Suzanne, am I turning over to you to talk a bit first?
Yeah, you might as well. So there's actually two attachments to this agenda item because I initially made the changes on the sheet that summarized all the student feedback, because it was just easier to read the student feedback and then make the changes. And then it was thought that that was a little messy. And so Diane put together a clean edited copy of GP 12. They should be identical, but they're not, because there was one change we made quite late in the process, but talk about that in a minute. I did want to just say before we get into the actual GP that a lot of the student feedback, which was very good and very comprehensive, by the way, thank you so much, focused not really on the policy itself, but on the onboarding process that we went through and things that they would like to see now that they've had some experience. Oh, you should have told us this, you should have told us that, we should have watched a board meeting. And I did summarize all of that on a separate sheet that I was going to have Diane attached to the agenda. But then Marnie and I met with the superintendent and Marcel Hauser, who is, I guess, going to take this student rep process under his wing on the district side of things. And we discussed ways that the district could help support the board in supporting the students, because when I actually made the list of everything that the students thought would be helpful, I realized the board probably didn't have the bandwidth to do it all because the board's already really busy. So we're working through that, but there was a lot of good suggestions, and definitely a lot of things that we want to do differently this next fall. I will say that one of the things that was suggested was that the students produce a little video of what it's like to be a student rep, which I thought was an awesome idea. If you guys, if any of the 8 of you want to get together and work on that, we'd love it. So that's just throw that out there. Okay, so having said all that, based on the input from this, I did have a few changes to suggest. And the first one is in number 2. And actually, this one, I do need some input from the board because there was a lot of desire to have overlapping terms. But some people said that the overlap should be in the fall, and some people thought the overlap should be in the following spring. And at one point, it was going to be a 24-month or 21-month term. It got a little crazy. So I arbitrarily said 18 months, starting in May of the application year and ending in October, which kind of puts some of the overlap in the spring and some of the overlap in the fall. Seniors obviously wouldn't have the fall overlap. They'd be done in June. I am totally amenable to something else. If you guys think it should all be in the spring or all be in the fall or whatever else, I kind of pulled those out of the air based on the notes that I got from you. So I don't know if there's any thoughts on that or if the students have any thoughts.
So I guess the length of term has been a conversation since we started. I think the initial planning assumption was a 2-year term. And then we got feedback that that would be too long, too significant a commitment. I don't think people knew if it would be like a good thing to do for 2 years. And so we pulled back to 1-year commitment. The 1.5 years, I just wonder, just operationally, is that hard to deal with? Like, why not just go with 2? Or if that seems fine, maybe just for me, it feels like I would have to remember the onboarding, offboarding months. It felt more complex to me, but I like the idea of longer than 1 year for sure. And if that kind of 1.5 year commitment makes sense and gives a good overlap, then I think it would be good.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of a 2-year term. Obviously, if you came in as a senior, you'd only do 1 year. But again, is that daunting from a student perspective? Would you guys have signed up if you got 2 years? Is anybody going to come back? Sorry. I know it feels chatty, but it's not.
Personally, I didn't really know what I was signing up for. So like 2 years, I mean, I guess if I knew what I was signing up for, like if we make it clear, what the actual student board reps do, then 2 years, might be fine because inevitably someone's going to be okay with it as long as they know what they're doing. But I would also say that the difference between a 0.5-year term and a 2-year term, I think was talked about that the 2-year term would kind of imply that the student board reps would actually have to do ELs for 2 years. I think the 0.5, they wouldn't be doing work at the point the second half, but they would be kind of teaching the new reps what they're supposed to be doing.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I agree with Jordan in the sense that I think that 2 complete years of doing feedback and working with the board might turn people away. But I think that having that some sort of window that's just not doing EL reports and just helping kind of integrate the new people into it. I think that's the most important key takeaway from the conversation, because I think that was the most important part that we missed, and I think would be really valuable to the future generations that are doing this.
Yeah, I had the same thought with that. Our students are saying, because if they're the new ones that are starting in May are really just shadowing the other students. Is that our concept, that the new students are shadowing
our existing students as they finish up their work, and that's part of their onboarding. And then as again, it goes into October, what I'll call the new students are now the official ones, and the outgoing are mentoring them as they finish up. So it's kind of that transition. That's how I was thinking.
And
we
that's
were
what
doing.
that's what I wrote. I was
Yeah.
just floating the other idea.
Okay. Right.
I'm totally open to anything people want to do.
Well, I mean, I think, one nice thing is it gets the students doing the work or part of the work right away, right? If we select them in April, they start in May and helps them, really start to get into it, but they're just shadowing the other
Right.
students.
So the new ones who
Yeah.
we would pick in April, yes, they would start in May, but they wouldn't actually be doing any of the EL work. They would be watching these veteran people
Right.
finishing up their year.
Right. And then as they go in and start doing the real work in August, September, October, our veteran students could be supporting them and coaching them and teaching them a little bit, learning the ropes as they go through on how to do this. So to me, that seems like a good system to try. And again, whatever we do here too, may be something that y'all learn from and either keep going at or make more changes to.
I'll add one thing, which is I think there was some intent to continue on some of that gradual release into the fall as well, because even though there might be some shadowing in the spring, then you kind of, summer happens and then, we forget everything, not everything. There is summer learning loss. That is a real thing, but we have a different perspective coming back new to the school year. So it would be valuable to reset, right, with the new calendar year for monitoring. So there would be some gradual release, I think, in the fall as well. So I think we can structure that with, with working with the students on what might be needed and how they want to be supported. I will note also that in this definitive 14 versus 18, we're kind of getting lost in like the overlapping months here. And I think the real intent is to say overlap. And I think we'll have about 2 years will be kind of funky because this year we only have, I think, 2 students in the group that are rising to be in 11th and 12th grade. So I think by leaving it less defined, we'll be able to iron that out over the next 2 years in terms of a consistent overlap. But by saying 14 months, we're not going to be perfect on that this year. And then we have to think about the sequencing and phasing in of folks on that basis. So we're going to have a little bit of a time challenge with the grade levels in the next year and a half, basically.
And we don't change the rules on you midterm because that's not nice. So we told you guys you're done in June. If you want to be done in June, you can be done in June. But if you are willing to hang around and mentor the other folks through October, that would be lovely.
Right. And it really depends on whether they're juniors or seniors, because if you're
Well,
seniors,
obviously,
you're
if you're
probably
seniors,
done.
you're gone.
But
I don't know
we
who I'm
respect
talking
that.
to.
Okay. Yeah.
So my only suggestion would be that we just keep it a little bit looser and say we intend to have overlap for training and and support, and that we revisit what that actually looks like when we get onto a regular cadence for the 2 groups of students that are coming in. But that's just a minor note on the detailed.
I like
14 months.
I like the overlap quite a bit.
Okay, so should I not be specifying months? Is that what you're saying? Do you want me to take the months out? No.
Well, you could just say approximately.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotta make notes here so I remember. Okay, so that was thing 1. Okay, number 3, lot of feedback that we just had too many bullets and they were overlapping and they were confusing. So go back to the other, oops, what's the other one? Okay, so we suggested eliminating C and D. Actually, we're not really eliminating D, we're just moving it further down. C we eliminated because it was restated in, oh gosh. Report to the board. It just felt redundant to, was it H or K? Now I'm losing it. I'm sorry. I should have been better prepared.
I think the old H
The old H.
and the old J.
Yeah, because we already had to provide reports to the board and to report back to the student body. It just seemed like we had already said it.
I was gonna say, and as long as we have this overlap, hopefully our veteran students will share their communication tools that they have come up with at their schools, right, with the new students. And as well as the new students may come up with new ones. But now that we have a group, because they've taken great advantage of doing these surveys through the library and their method. And so that would be good to share those things.
I know that we've been sharing our EL reports with Andrea. Like we've been sending them to her as we go. So will those be available to the new student reps? Because I had no idea how to write an EL report. And I think we all do it in a different way. So like providing different examples of like possible ways that other students could do it is like really helpful.
I think that's the intent. And, at one point somebody said, well, there should be a rubric for the report. And we sort of felt, no, we kind of like just having you go at it in the way that you think makes the most sense. But I think your sample reports will provide not a rubric for the new students, but, an idea of you can do it this way or you can do it that way, yeah. So I would assume yes. We got rid of the review historical performance of the ELs and just rolled it into the previous bullet. Because you're already going to be familiar with the EL, including historical performance.
I have a question about one of the edits that you made. It's part of 3, it's the new D. It says to attend as many possible regular school board meetings which occur. So are you going to be expecting them to, like, they'll be basically required unless they have an excuse?
That bullet is still in there. I just I switched the order of a couple of bullets. So it is, the old D is actually the new D. So it's still there to attend as many as possible. It's up to you to determine how many are possible.
Because like this year we had like Andrea would email us like prior and tell us which ones we were reporting at, but like the general consensus was that those were the only ones we had to go to, which ended up not being. But I think that was just like a miscommunication thing.
Well, it was, the board initially thought, come to all of them. And then actually that was me. I said they should come to all of them. And I was told, no, that's not realistic. And I said, okay, come to as many as you can. And then I think that got translated into, well, you don't have to go to all of them, just go to these. And the general feedback we got in the meetings was that, no, we could go to more. That's not terrible. I mean, and obviously you don't have to sit through calendaring and everything else like we do. But I got the general feedback that, no, we could go to more. And in fact, as you go to more, you understand the cadence of the board and you understand the kinds of things that are on the agenda. And I think it becomes easier for you guys to participate in the meetings. So it's as many as possible, but some people might think, oh, that's almost all of them. And other people might think, yeah, it's only going to be so many. So we're kind of trusting you on that one. Okay, I thought there were more in there, but maybe that was it.
Although I'll add one thing. The students did give feedback that it's helpful to have the person at your school, right? So you could trade off and help each other.
Yes.
So that was a positive, and that managing attendance was about representation at the meetings in a consistent way, so that all high schools were, were clearly having a voice in the meeting. So by staying for the full meeting and doing that preparation, engaging in a different way in the agenda, that would help create a seamless sort of relay tag team partnership between representatives. I believe that was something that did come up, that I want to just bring that forward.
Yeah. And there were some things that I didn't put in policy because I didn't want to be restrictive, but there was a lot of conversation about, well, gee, could we work on the ELs as a team instead of each person going off and doing something? Absolutely. Work as a team, divide up the meetings between the 2 reps at each school. Any of that that works for you guys is fine with us.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, in this EL, this technology EL, like me and Jordan, because we're at the same school and we knew each other from the retreat, we were able to work together and use we create our own reports, but we used each other's feedback and I used his survey and based my stuff off of that. So, but we couldn't really do that prior just because we had that one meeting in the summer and then none of us really exchanged info or planned ahead in that sense because this is we're in March. So it was that was in August, right? So it was none of us really planned that far ahead or expected that, but it was really helpful to be able to use each other's stuff. So I think that opportunity, highlighting that at the very first meeting and being
yeah, and that's one of the notes in the onboarding is that absolutely we should have an email listserv or a phone texting, however you guys want to communicate, but you should all have each other's contact information and contact information for whoever the board mentors are, so that, yes, absolutely, you can do that sort of thing. You can ask each other questions, all of that. And I was surprised actually that hadn't happened, but okay. And then, so number 4 was repetitious because we already talked about encouraged to attend all meetings. So it just becomes student representatives will not hold voting rights, make motions, blah, blah, blah. We talked about okay, 1 or 2 board members serving as liaisons. Oh, attendance is also expected at 2 additional check-in meetings to be held in the fall and early spring. There was a desire for more check-in meetings or more frequent check-in meetings. So we'll have an onboarding, something in the fall, something in the spring. We, on number 9, we added to the interview team 1 current student representative because there was interest expressed in that. I did not specify how that student representative would be chosen. I'm thinking that's up to you guys. Just decide who wants to or can be available for that.
is it possible to do multiple represent or switch off or do we just want 1?
I think you're going to need to be just 1 because you're interviewing candidates. So you're going to need to know what each of them said. I eliminated 11 because again, it was redundant.
Oh, sorry, Susan, on that last one.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously you'll decide what you want to do going forward, but we did group the interviews by school last time. So the activities coordinator from that school was the activities
Oh, I
coordinator.
see what you're saying. Yeah.
And
so
so it
we
was
could
from
change
you
student
could
reps.
change if potentially if for Issaquah High, it could be one of these 2. For Liberty, it could be one of the Liberty representatives, depending on how you think about it. But we did switch the activities coordinator and the ASB representative.
Right.
So they were the people from that school.
The teacher too, right? So each panel.
Actually, it was the same
Oh.
teacher because it was the civics teacher.
That each high school would have a civics. I mean,
No, but we just had one civics
just had one.
teacher.
that did it for all the
did it
high
for
schools.
all the high
Okay, how interesting. Yeah, I don't think I realized.
And I think by doing that, having the student rep, one of the student reps pair from that school being part of the interview would actually make it less onerous because there's going to be who knows how many interviews. And so by just saying you're interviewing these 3 or 4 from your school, I think might make it less onerous on them.
Yeah. So that would work. I stand corrected.
Right. Just has to be for a school.
Mhm.
That you have to do all of them because if you're making choices, you have to have seen all the students from that school.
From that school.
I have a question. So, do you want just 1 student representative per interview, or could we possibly have multiple student representatives per interview? Because then you could fix the problem of oh, if multiple people want to do it, then you don't have to split up or choose 1.
I feel like it might be a little more intimidating. But I agree with like the sense that you get more feedback, but also like we were talking about how we want to make it like inclusive, and especially because like a lot of students have trouble with like speaking in those settings, and you already have like during our interviews, we had like 5 people sitting around the table, and adding more people to that, I feel like it's just gonna increase stress, but like it's valid.
I did have another question for the board, because in this, we talk about having board liaisons. And so this year that was Marnie and Sydney, and then Marnie and me. And the students talked about each student wanted to have like an individual board member or members that they could ask questions of, or sort of have a board mentor. Are we assuming that the board, the official board liaisons, would serve as the mentors to all 8 students? Or did we want to share the wealth, or I don't know. It's not specific in the policy.
I think sharing the wealth is good. I mean, we are vastly different humans and different potential. We could probably also look at, if just a time and availability doesn't work, maybe the mentoring is 1 to 2 or 1 to 3, like versus 1-on-1. But I wouldn't want anyone to miss out on the opportunity if they wanted to be the mentor.
Well, and then I do want to be careful. Obviously, you don't want, there's safety issues around students texting adults.
Right.
Individually.
Oh, yeah,
So
we
you
don't
got to
want-
have another adult on the thread
Yeah.
or something like that. So, so that part is left sort of open. It's not, I mean, policy specifies that there will be 1 to 2 board liaisons. Whether those people serve as mentors or whether you have other mentors, I guess is just up to the board.
I think the main intent from the feedback I heard from the students was just being in relationship to get to know board members and having informal opportunities. And that could come in the form of getting together before a board meeting if there was not a work session or executive session to have dinner, but just to, have that opportunity to interact informally and build relationships. So it's not as, it is formal in this setting, but that we make informal opportunities for getting to know and learn from each other. Paige and Jordan, I didn't want to take away that sentiment, but does that validate or resonate with you?
Yeah, I think you pretty much summed up what our ideas were.
Okay. And that is all I have, unless there are any questions or
other ideas people want to.
yeah, the only note that I have so far is that I'm going to put some kind of approximately in that May to October conversation on number 2.
Thank you so much for taking this on. I also want to thank Andrea Zier for her work in this, because this was a new system and structure to support dialogue and student voice. And we have a lot of learning, and she's facilitated those continuous learning conversations. And the students do have all their emails, right? But it's one thing to have all the emails but also for us to create the intentional spaces together with the board to support that kind of listening and learning. So I just want to say thank you to Andrea for her leadership in that effort. And there'll be a transition as we turn to the summer to help make that smooth for next year. And I want to thank the board for promoting and supporting student voice. And I want to thank all the student representatives for just showing up and also contributing to something that was new and helping to make it better. So thank you.
And I was going to say thank you for not exactly being our guinea pigs, but we were developing
Pioneers.
the process. Yes, pioneers is a much better word. And certainly I appreciate all the input that we got from you to make changes to the policy and the process. I think next year is going to be much smoother.
Yes.
We've learned a lot. So thank you.
I was just going to add, because you talked about what you were going to change and add the approximately for the months, but I also think you should make a note in there, something about the student representative is from each school. Kind of like, because it's called out that the
Oh,
ASB
on the-
exec board
on the
officer
interview?
is from each high school. But I think we should call that out for the
Okay.
student to match
All
it,
right.
because that concept seemed to make sense to not ask one student to do it for all 4 high schools. But one student, I don't, however you want to say.
Yeah,
it,
no,
from
that's
that
fine
high
from each
school.
high
Okay,
school.
I think
I've
that
got
would
it.
be good.
Got it. And then,
Director Gell.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just seen next week we're having hopefully 2 students from Issaquah that will join our WASDA regional meeting in Shoreline.
Oh, good.
And they're going to be paired with a board member and talk about we are representing the large school districts, because having student representatives in a large school district is very different than Mercer Island or Riverview, where they have one high school.
Yep.
And so looking for a board member who is going to be part of that student panel representing our school district. So about that. And then do we have 2 students who we found yet?
We sent the invitation. I don't know if we got responses yet. And it was going back to Diane, who was out.
Diane was out today.
Yeah, so we'll get that referral. Does anyone want to take? You're looking for the board member to be on the panel. I'll be there. I'm happy to do want to do it.
I won't be there, so.
Oh, so that's 2 down. So that leaves us 2.
Well,
Rock, paper, scissors. I'm happy to do it.
I don't care. Do you want to do it?
Oh,
Or I'll do it. I don't care.
Okay, we'll decide.
Well,
on
I
the
think
drive.
Sydney was there during the interview process. So
I
if
was.
I were to pick,
Oh, okay.
Okay,
not that I.
I'm
do
in.
like
Deal.
Suzanne. but-
I think we're
No,
driving together, so we
no,
will
it's
both be
fine.
there.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, okay. So I have that. So then we'll bring this back in April for second read.
That is correct. We will
and,
bring it back for second read
approval?
and approval.
Cool.
Thank you. And again, I think it's been an awesome experience. I've greatly appreciated hearing the way to reach multiple students, the commentary that's come back. I think it's been impactful in how we look at, are we making the progress we hope to be making? So I think it's a great program. So next up, we have a discussion. I see Marcel Hauser's joined us at the front on our proposed vision statement. So, well, I guess we'll wait and see if we're gonna have a motion. We'll get through it and see if we think we're ready to take action tonight. Okay,
Yeah, there's no motion.
there's no motion yet. Yeah, it was potential, so we'll hold on that now. Superintendent, over to you.
Great. I will kick us off, and Marcel Hauser is joining us. So state your name and your title so we can make that official.
Marcel Hauser, Senior Advisor in Strategy. Good evening, Board Director, Superintendent Toya. Glad to be here.
Great, thank you. So we're going to partner together on this. So really the purpose of our time is to share an update on our strategic plan process and present the draft vision statement for the board to discuss and to have future action. As we know, we're in the process of developing a 3-year strategic plan with multiple components. We've shared this pyramid slide to show how all of this fits together. The vision sits on top of the district mission and ends. And then we move towards priority areas, goals, metrics, strategies, and work streams. So this is something that the community has seen many times. And our effort to develop a strategic plan really, as I look at the next slide on this one, it's about prioritizing our work, leveraging our strengths, having cohesion and alignment. So really trying to answer a set of deceptively simple questions on what are we trying to do? How will we do it? How will we know we're on track at any given moment? And if we're not on track, what will we do about that? So just reminding people of those details behind the strategic plan itself. Our timeline for this is where we are right now and where we're going, what we've completed. We're sort of, I mean, we're not exactly halfway there because it makes it seem like we're halfway there, but we're closer to sort of getting to the next part, which is getting board approval on various components and resolution to support the strategic plan, and then moving more towards implementation and delivery. And the work will be going well beyond June as we actually start to implement and set up systems and structures. So, but we are here tonight to discuss this, the vision component, and we had our work study session on the strategic plan itself earlier today. So we are always showing where we have been engaging. We have done a lot of different constituent engagement across the district with families, with business leaders, with community leaders, with students, with our teachers, specific groups that are representative of a segment of our population, and across our administration team as well. So this has been a pretty powerful set of engagements, and a lot of learning has come from that. This next slide is really just reminding us of our ends and our mission for the community to see this as we talk about this, and to center that for those who are not in this room, because we can see certainly our mission and our ends on the wall here in the boardroom. And as we shift now back to just the vision, that's just the content leading up to this. This is the North Star of how we want to change the world. And we just appreciate that we have gotten a lot of input, had a lot of discussion. And in particular, the board asked to issue the challenge to the community through a thought exchange. And on the next slide, you can see just some of the high level impact here. And I'll pass it to Marcel to take it over from here.
Just to highlight, I want to thank the comms team for putting together the thought exchange, but also community. So we reached out. So as we started to talk about the strategic plan, we had the task of trying to gather vision feedback. So thank you to the board. We got the vision statement. We feel like to about 75, 80%. And it was missing an ending or that special sort of to what end sort of finishing sentence. So thought exchange here, you can see participation. There's 308 total participants. There are 139 individuals who shared thoughts. Those are individual thoughts that they shared. And then 189 individuals rated thoughts. So what we used, we polled the highest rated thoughts and completed the vision statements based on those thoughts. So I get the fun part, share some of the thoughts that came out of visions, the thought exchange, and from feedback from community. So starting with option A, just in the process, we always thought that the first vision statement, really you could end it where we finished it. So I'm gonna read the first one out loud. It's ISD students thrive as they engage in meaningful learning that unlocks their passion and potential. So option A, really, you could stop it there and that could be the vision statement, but there's a bunch of other options we wanna run through here. So B is the same vision statement, but with a ... So it's to what end could be personalized to each individual community member or staff member. C down to G, now those are the vision statement, the thought exchange results that came from the highest rated thoughts. So I'll read the blue kind of areas. So one was to be kind, caring, responsible citizens. Another finishing sentence was to contribute to community and society. Option E was for the future. Now I'll add future was a key word or a theme that popped in the thought exchange results. So word that created a lot of energy. Option F is for the real world. And then option G from thought exchange was and prepares them to be global citizens. So a lot of energy around entering into the real world, becoming global responsible citizens. So those are results from thought exchange. We also knew that it's, you can measure and survey, but to reach other folks, it's important to go where people are at. So through focus groups, we also asked the same question, please finish this sentence, ... So from one of our focus groups, we had the ending sentence, which is for their life after school. Also an ending as they navigate their own path. There's also an ending to positively impact the world. So very aspirational ending. I like that one. Another one is to contribute to their communities. And then our final sort of one that I pulled through was to pursue limitless opportunities. So a little variation in what we heard, but I thought some really good ideas that came from community, through thought exchange, but also in-person focus groups and community meetings. So with that, I want to stop here and pause and pose the question back to the board. Are there any options that resonate with you after seeing community feedback, thinking about it a bit? And we've been talking about this for probably about a month now, gathering feedback. What pops to you and what resonates?
So going back to our ends 3, I have a problem with the ones that talk about becoming citizens, because that's a charged word in a community where not everyone is a citizen of this country. You could substitute another word, adults or something else, but I would push back on that. I was thinking this morning as I was driving around, I was trying to come up with what was the characteristic, or what was in my head, what was missing from this aspirational vision. And of course, I came up with 2 words that don't fit in the structure of the sentence. I came up with compassion and integrity in terms of what are the characteristics of the adults that I want to create out of this school system. If that was, my vision would be compassionate and what's the adjective version of integrity? Demonstrating integrity. And so I don't know how that would fit into this structure. It's probably close to option C in terms of potential to be kind, caring, responsible adults, or unlocks their potential while demonstrating compassion and integrity. I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there because as I was sort of struggling with what is my vision, those were the two words that popped into my head.
I'll just give some thoughts. I get concerned about ones that seem too highfalutin. In other words, they're just beyond achievement, like to pursue limitless opportunities. I mean, or to positively impact the world. For some kids, it's just graduating from high school and finding a job afterwards. And they may not see themselves in that, even though we would believe that students graduating from high school and going on to employment absolutely positively impact the world. But I want all students to see themselves in this. I guess of these, the one that jumped out at me, if I'm going to add an ending, was as they navigate their own path, because it makes it unique to them. Whatever that path is, wherever they go after, they're navigating it and they're in charge of it.
I mean, my take has been option B. The ... and leaving that open to what end, our job as a district is allowing students to thrive, creating an environment in which students are thriving and engaging in meaningful learning. And through that, they'll have an opportunity to unlock their passion and potential. But to what end, I still think is up to the student. To what end are you doing those things? So I'm still fine. And I love the idea of hearing from the community what their ... is. In actually, some of them are providing it by putting that end on. You can see how it's different so that we're not the ones defining what that passion and full potential look like. But that rather we're creating the environment for that to be built.
I like and I agree with everything that people said. So but we have enough words as it is, so we can't add all those words. I could be swayed in any of those ways. I think I hear what you're saying, Anne, about the whole seems expansive, but I do like the aspirational part about impacting the world or impacting communities, because whether they see it or not, right? That's what I want. And to sort of what Suzanne was saying about, compassion, integrity, like I want our students to go change the world and impact their communities and do that. Listening to the UW admissions thing as part of the coffee with our principal from Skyline last night, when UW says one of the top things they look at is what sort of community service and leadership has a applicant to UW demonstrated. So even in our local higher education, that's a really valuable thing that they look at and want to see. So I think I like the ... idea as well, but I also like the aspirational. I want our students to see themselves as change makers, because any of them can and they will do that in all of their own unique ways, whether it is just graduating high school, or something else. So I could be swayed in any of these ways, probably.
So see, if you pick mine, you don't have to make a decision.
That is a decision. One nice thing
It
about
is
being
a-
the dot, dot, dot is it doesn't add more words. It's easier to say.
But then you have to describe why the dots are there.
Well, that's
which is
fair.
Maybe
That's
what
true.
throws me off. So the dot, 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 like, is it a typo? Did they leave it? I love it once you describe it, but it's like it adds more words once you describe it. Fill in your own blank. I don't know. So for me, when I was looking, I looked at through all the thought exchange material and across different kinds of feedback that went into different categories. And for me, there were two words that popped out that I would love to add to it, and they were all and future. And I thought it was interesting that I think our intent of saying ISD wasn't all, but people still wanted to see the all. And so I thought that was just important, like to be more actively inclusive by using all. And for me, I stopped needing something after potential if I added future. So where I landed was either of two things. All students thrive as they engage in meaningful learning that unlocks their passion and future potential, or all ISD students thrive as they engage. I don't know if we need that ISD because it would follow like Issaquah School District. So all ISD students thrive as they engage in meaningful learning that unlocks their passion and future potential. So for me, adding all, I thought was something that people kept kind of raising. And I thought it was just so funny. I was like, I think when we wrote ISD, we meant all, but if it still didn't feel like all, we should say all. And
You know how I feel about that.
we know what we know how you feel about that. And then for me, if we did future potential, then that to me either answer the dot, 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 or what might follow. So that was where I got to with it.
And to that, it's their future potential, right? Because
Yes.
again, it's unique. That was what drew me to as they navigate their own path, it's theirs.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
own it. So I can, yours is a shorter version of saying that.
Yeah, but we got their passion and future potential. I was giving that there to both of them. Their
Right,
passion and
that's what I
future-
mean.
yeah.
To me, I put that across both of them because they're finding their passion and they're finding their future potential, whatever that's going to be.
Mhm. But I think we got to add the all.
I'm okay with the all. I am okay with getting rid of ISD and just saying all students. Future potential feels redundant to me. Your potential is in the future.
I couldn't agree.
Mm.
It's
It
Fair.
just is what it is.
Then I'm ending in it, then I'm going with the end, no dot, dot, dot.
like
That's fair.
I agree. Future potential is the same thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
You're
fair.
saying that's what
I
potential
accept-
is
I accept
about.
that.
It's forward looking.
I actually also kind of liked positively impact the world. I really did. Because
So many
that
more options.
you have, right? It's
New ways. Like it's not
Yeah,
right. You can positively impact the world by doing anything.
Well, I'm
It's
much
just-
better with the positively impact the world than the pursue limitless opportunities. Because I don't know what that just becomes. I don't know.
Just too feel
Right.
good.
But to positively impact the world, everybody should have that intention, no matter what you do. I mean, so I could be okay with that one versus with going with the other one.
okay. So let's try it again.
But I agree with all students. I didn't really ever like the ISD. I don't generally
Yeah.
like the ISD in anything that we
Mhm.
see and get, whether it's staff or whatever. So
I think
do
yeah,
like
it
both.
flows better to say just all students because, well, I mean, we're talking about ISD students. But it's true for everybody, but we're impacting ISD students, but I think that's clear from where we sit.
Right, right. So all students thrive as they engage in meaningful learning that unlocks their passion and potential and positively impacts the world.
Potential to positively.
Their potential to positively.
It's
impact
just
the world.
option J modified to
J?
say all instead of ISD.
J. Yeah, okay, got it. Yes, all
Can you go
students
to
thrive
that,
as they engage in
Marcel?
meaningful learning that unlocks their passion and potential to positively impact the world.
I think the clicker's working.
11.
I think there's a couple back.
It's not 10. Come on.
11.
J, yeah. Yeah, one more. Oh, Oh, maybe it's not in
One
that
more
version.
forward.
There
it
we
is.
go.
There it is.
Got it.
J all instead of IS. I like that. Two positive.
I also want to encourage you to look back at the mission and the ends, right? So sort of cross-check with words and see if the concepts hang together.
I think it does with our mission because it talks about a dynamic global environment. So I think it would fit pretty well.
Global dynamic. Yeah.
I may have to give it up, but I really would like something in there about just being nice people. I mean, no, I'm serious. We spend so much time talking about social emotional learning and trying to create nice, compassionate human beings.
Then maybe we need to add that in our civic engagement one, and that's where it could live.
Maybe.
And broaden our
Yes.
definition from it just saying students will live as responsible members of society, because your point is well taken. Like, it isn't just, we don't want them just to be responsible, because you can be responsible and not compassionate,
Exactly.
and you can be responsible and not have integrity. So I think our work is really to broaden that,
I could be persuaded
because that would,
with that.
I think that would make more sense, because I think that's what we really want. And that's why I even changed it from the word citizenship. So
And I think, I think I came around to this at that community meeting where I fully expected people to talk about how ISD needs to have all this rigorous academic stuff to get their kid into college. And they said, I want my kid to learn how to adult, and I want him to be a nice person, and I want him to have a happy life. And I applaud all those sentiments, but I wasn't expecting to hear them. And so I want to grab it. But yeah, I could see it living there. And I do, there's something really nice about, positively impact the world sounds big, but
it's also small.
it can be helping somebody cross the street and you have positively impacted the world, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
Helping shovel snow, helping yeah. How do we feel about that? How do we feel about that? J, starting with all instead of ISD, and an update to the civic engagement. Do we want to think about it and bring it back for a final? Okay.
I think we would, because we want to at least give the community and staff need time to light our email inboxes up.
Right, if they revolt, I guess we want to know if they're going to
Absolutely
revolt
not.
over this.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So to be clear, we just have some proposals for civic engagement. We might need more process for that.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, that.
We understand.
Oh,
Okay.
Oh, yeah, not to change
Oh,
that.
okay.
Apparently I just raised my hand again and
We've got
I
a
have got to
process.
stop doing this.
Yeah.
But I will try, because it was my idea, I will try to come up with some words for civic engagement. And I like the fact that you're throwing me a bone and letting me put those words in there.
I do like it with a lot together. And then,
Because I think it really takes a mission for, we want them to be prepared for these things, but then what would you want to do with them?
Yeah.
We want them to positively impact.
Oh, good job.
We narrowed down.
Than I thought it would be.
We did. So we're going with all students to thrive as they engage in meaningful learning that unlocks their passion to positively impact the world.
Passion and potential.
Passion. No.
Yes.
Oh, passion and potential.
Yeah, it's
I
right.
lost that.
Yeah.
Wait.
All students thrive as they engage in meaningful learning that unlocks their passion and potential
Okay.
to positively impact.
Okay, I feel
the world.
better. When I typed it in myself because I couldn't see it there, I lost that and potential, and I was trying to figure, I didn't really like just this passion, but it was my
Passion changed the
typing,
world.
so it was my mistake. I know. I was like, oh,
I like that less.
I like that less, but I'm better now that
So-
I got the last word added. So that was my mistake.
So does this mean that you might, are you ready now, or this is what you want
No, I
to
think
sit
we'll
with?
we'll bring it back.
Okay.
We'll
Yeah.
allow for feedback.
This is kind of like a sort of a
We
first
can-
read because we've come to something that we all are head nodding
Would we like to
over.
call for public input now to see if I can?
Mostly, oh, okay. She likes the ...
I mean,
That's why.
on your version, you can put more.
Yeah.
Two more.
You just put some dots there.
Sorry. Do we want to see if anyone wants to give us any input now? We can do that. Okay, so why don't we see if there's any public input currently for folks who are in the room or online, just we collect it now. Anyone in the room would like to give input? Okay, anyone on Zoom? Okay, well, we'll bring it back. We'll be able to show it and then people can give additional feedback as we bring it back, but that was really good.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Marcel, and good work, board. Any final comments on that one, Superintendent?
That was great. I appreciated the discussion, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we land in a month.
It was good work. Okay, next on the agenda, we have an update on our ongoing budget discussions. I see we have CFO who's joined us at the podium. So our next installment of this discussion. So Superintendent, CFO, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, Martin Kearney, Chief of Finance and Operations. I have a pretty brief update for you tonight regarding the budget. Just some key things that have happened through this week that I wanted to bring to your attention. Again, just a brief update here. Starting with kindergarten. So we've gone through the initial kindergarten registration roundup process. And what we've experienced so far is we're down a little bit more than we thought we would be. We knew that the incoming class was going to be a little bit less than the previous year just because of the birth rate trends. So we expected that. Coming in a little bit light. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue our outreach efforts. We're working with our communications department and the buildings to make sure that people know where to go, where to register, and what to do so that we can get everybody signed up and in the system. So, and then what happens at this point is based on these numbers, we begin or continue updating our enrollment projections depending on what we see. So again, right now we're just keeping it, we're watching it, we're making sure that the numbers look like generally what we want them to see, and then we'll make adjustments if we need to our later projections. Also wanted to mention that this week the revenue forecast came out from the state, projected at 65.7 billion over the 23-25 budget cycle. That's a slight decrease, big numbers, of course, but 483 million is about 0.7% drop from the forecast that came out in November. So important in terms of the state making decisions on what's available for budgeting and what they have to make decisions with. And then, of course, today, just midday today, the Senate had their budget proposal out. And so we haven't had much time, obviously, our team to look through there, but a couple of things that stood out right away. The inflationary factor for salary set at 3.7% for 23-24. And then for special education, the increased cost multipliers are pursuant to Senate Bill 5311. And then, of course, we're going to continue to look through there, get additional analysis from those folks who are out there looking at this with us. And then we begin to use those in our revenue modeling as we build out the budget for next year. And of course, we anticipate that the House budget will be, the proposal will be out early next week, and we can do the same once we see that. So this is really it. Just wanted to kind of keep you up to date on what we're seeing, what's coming out this week, and what we're integrating into our creation of the budget for next year. So are there any questions? Yep.
So the special ed bill, so how does that impact what we would receive?
So that's a great question. That's something that we're going to run the numbers on now that we have that, and we will.
But it's possible we'll get something.
Very possible that we'll get some additional there. Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you for the ongoing updates.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So our next agenda item is monitoring EL 14 instruction. Do we have a motion?
I move the board accept the monitoring report for EL 14 instructional program as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Superintendent, you.
Okay, great. So again, starting with appreciation here, our students, Sophia and Paige provided their input for EL 14, which then informed how we looked at the interpretation, but in particular, want to note and pull forward how our students are talking about how they experience our curriculum. And their effort and acknowledgement that they wish there was, more universal design for learning that really allows more choice, representation, and expression in their engagement in a new content or skill and how they show in their learning and their progress. So I just want to highlight that, and that very much does align with our efforts on MTSS, which really is rooted in universal design for learning and which is rooted in brain science around how we need multiple modalities and methods to ensure that there's an engagement in content, there is representation of that learning in different ways, and that there's different ways for students to show their action and expression of that content itself or skill. So really well aligned with where we're going in terms of the feedback and input, and I know we have a lot underway. So just wanted to acknowledge that linkage for our student input and how we construct our learning environment and support it. Additionally, I would say highlight a couple of things is that we've added some more details to show how we're supporting developing students' passion at different levels, which aligns, directionally with where the vision has been developing. We've had more emphasis on the work, as I mentioned, of the multi-tiered systems of support to meet individual learner needs. Again, how that links to both universal design for learning and inclusionary practices and efforts. And our efforts overall, it was noted that we are exceeding the requirements of the transitional bilingual instruction program. And that was noted by one of the students in particular. That's, going quite well. So, next year, as we continue to move through our process of aligning our interpretation, and then with the efforts that we're doing this year, we'll see more of a, close proximity to that work. As we're still kind of looking at the last year while we're adjusting the interpretation as we go this year. So I want to just note that. And thanks to Dr. Dana Bailey and the full cabinet for their efforts to provide input and collaborate together. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Bailey, and Rich Melish is here to join, and we might have some others be invited in as we engage in the content and questions might arise from the board. So with that, Dr. Bailey.
Thank you. You covered a lot of the high points, but I will jump in. As we prepared this monitoring report, on the instructional programs, the team continued to consider the board feedback from the beginning of the year to bring specific and targeted data, high-level analysis, and to include, where appropriate, the leading indicators, things that we could weave in from data that we had from last year and how it feeds into this year's informing this year's practices. In consideration of the students, EL 14, we had some careful analysis of the new interpretations. We did highlight some elements very robustly and included the pieces that were either new or novel in the last year. I think you can see that things were beginning to return to normal, and they are continuing to continue to return to normal as we go. Specifically in section 4 of this monitoring report, we highlighted the many ways that students can explore their passions and interests through all of the options available for high school level students. Examples are offered at a more granular level for this particular piece because I wanted you to see all the robustness that's happening at the high school, and also to see how the options all fit together to form a continuum. The high-level practices and the professional development that was started last year and continued this year, an example how the system continues to work to strengthen Tier 1 for all students through creating many entry points in learning through UDL, and to strengthen the skills and confidence of staff in culturally responsive education, and to respond to the known social emotional needs of our students through the strengthening the adults' understanding of trauma-informed practices. As our systems work in integrated MTSS continues, we now have universal screeners in math at the elementary level and literacy elementary and middle schools. These screeners are used to monitor progress of all students and to make sure that we can know early which students have indicators of skills that are lagging behind their peers, and also checking mid-year to make sure some students who aren't making progress are going to get the interventions that they need. One function of the integrated MTSS system, the success blocks, was initiated last year. Evidence of the effectiveness of success blocks after year 1 was presented in ENS 2. And for this year, The mid-year or winter diagnostic shows evidence that we do have students moving from not proficient to proficient at that January mark. And in the program groups, we see both students moving from not proficient to proficient at the January mark, but we also see groups of students moving from level 1 to level 2. So even though they haven't maybe closed all of the gap, they are climbing in that direction. The mid-year for elementary school was in January, and that leaves a lot of the school year left for more successes to be celebrated. The Tier 2 systems give individual schools the chance to monitor progress for all students needing interventions so that teachers and intervention teams can respond with either intensifying the interventions, fading the interventions, or deciding that they are in the right interventions and they should just keep going. And this is in response to the use of data that we see across the system. Some might be interested in the scope and sequence elements included in this report, and I've asked Rich Mellis to speak to that. He will also highlight one example of a mid-year and ongoing response to students' various needs, specifically in the area of high school mathematics.
Right, so giving a little bit of context to the scope and sequence document in there and that work is that for every time we do a district course adoption, one of the key components beyond selecting the materials is to get input from the adoption team who's really delved deeply into that material, into the scope and sequence. That's the document that gives guidance to all of the people who will be teaching the course, how to make sure that we're staying in similar pace and in similar delivery. And so the scope and sequence is a really key central document to every course. One of the other things that has been a practice of that around vertical alignment is we have tried to generally adopt sets of courses that are vertically aligned so that that adoption committee can give input into the scope and sequence of a series of courses over the years of time. So we might do the elementary literacy where they would give input on the scope and sequence from kindergarten through 5th grade. We might do middle school social studies so we can see the development of inquiry and social studies from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So it really tries to get that vertical alignment in with our scope and sequences. And then, of course, as mentioned in the report, our department leads and adoption committee representatives frequently review and update the scope and sequence as they get into the practice and realize, okay, we need to tweak this here and there. One example of being adaptive has been the work that we did last year around mathematics. When we knew that there were going to be math issues around Algebra 1, for example, as students were coming into the school year. What we didn't know was the magnitude of the challenge and the difficulties that students face. We didn't know how quickly they would respond to getting back into daily live instruction. So we weren't sure how much intervention was needed versus how much learning recovery was needed. Slight differences there. Mid-year, we convened teachers together because we saw that we weren't seeing the rate of progress as we needed, and we were seeing some students coming in with much larger gaps than was expected. So during that time, we added some computer labs. We continued to tweak the integration of algebra into geometry to address those students who had previously taken algebra and were now in geometry because we were concerned about them being ready for Algebra 2. And we added a mid-year pre-algebra course that has continued into this year to ensure that the students who came in with those larger gaps could get targeted instruction at their level. So we continue to meet periodically with our math leaders at the high school. And in fact, we're continuing to put together work groups to tackle individual problems in there. So that's just something of that work that we did last year around being responsive to learners in high school math.
We love being last on the agenda before the legislative, and the team is waiting if you have questions.
So why don't we check for public input before we get into our discussion? Is there any public input in the room? Okay, do we have any on Zoom? No? Awesome, thank you. So let's open it for board questions and discussion. Who would like to start? So I can start with mine. I was definitely the interested party in the scope and in the scope and sequence. And I know we've discussed that many times. I think it's the first time I'd actually seen one and saw the content of it, which I thought was really helpful. And your description of how it gets used was how it gets created and then used to make adjustments, super helpful. I guess my question is, I guess as it relates to doing curriculum adoption or when people review materials about what's in them, is this something that is reviewable at that same time as well? Do we share this information? Like for me, it was really interesting to see what were the expectations of learning, not just what is the content that's getting learned. So I don't know, I just didn't know how that gets tied into review of instructional material.
Yeah. So that's been evolving over the last couple of years as we've realized that just defining the standards wasn't what the standards don't capture things like our ends necessarily in them. And so the idea of the essential learnings is to help guide the adoption. So the first step now in the adoption process is to define those essential learnings so that it guides the review of the materials in large part. Did that answer the question?
It was good information, not the exact question I was asking. I guess it's just when we put materials for our courses, like we've done the curriculum selection, we put that on display for people to see it. Is this information that goes along with the actual like textbook or books that get read? Because for me, it was very helpful to understand what the learning objectives were in addition to what the material is. I just didn't know if that's something we share combined today.
You know, we haven't traditionally put that out during the public review, in part because it's still being a work in progress. But there's always a draft form of it by that time. So there's at least the parts like the essential learnings should be more or less defined. They might still be being edited, but we could put those essential learnings out there with the curriculum materials for public review. Yes. But
I know
that hasn't been the practice.
For me, I think it's one thing for me to have an opinion on what book gets read, but with the context of what do we think it is communicating or what is it a part of in the learning journey is helpful to put together. So that's just a curiosity for me. That was mine.
Appreciate that.
Others?
I'll go. I'll start. So I think that this is one of the most important ELs. They're all important, but I think this one is a really important one because it's about, what's in front of our students and what our staff are equipped with. I want to acknowledge our superintendent. Thank you for all the efforts you made to answer many of the questions that the back and forth we had, and I asked many. So I want to start with number 4, which is ensure that the instructional program addresses the different learning styles and needs of students of various backgrounds and abilities. And I think for me, when I think about this and I center on our early learning and those critical learn to read years, I need to see some actually information that shows that we're doing this. I mean, there were lots of nice words on the page about success blocks and literacy workshops. But I really want to know for our readers that are struggling, what are we doing that truly is addressing their learning styles? And so I would see that as evidenced by, wow, if you are in our LAP program, this was your iReady score in the fall, and this is how much growth you've made to springtime. And it's been more growth than if you weren't in it, or if you were a special education student. And so you needed different modalities or extra supports, you got them, and you also grew at the same rate as your general education peers. I don't know what the standard is and what you would expect it to be. That's your guys' job to tell us. But I think it's insufficient for me to see this. And that's where that those really early critical years that are foundational for the success of our district are really helpful. By the time it gets to be middle and high school, I think it's much more easily done because students are self-selecting into their various interests, but they're not doing any selections when they're in these earliest years. And this is when I think that they're really critical for us to show me, for you to show me that. And that's why you saw there was legislative action on dyslexia, because there was so much, I think, groundswell of, hey, our school districts just aren't really meeting those needs of our students and families. So we need to take legislative action on that. In the same way, we also, I think, need to see visibility for how are we actually truly, how do we know that we're actually meeting those different learning styles and needs of students of various backgrounds and abilities. So that's something that I need to see. And I know you can't generate a report and data in a few days. So I'm not expecting that, but I am expecting that going forward in the future would be really helpful for these critical K through 3 learning years to really see, because we don't get any iReady data. We don't really even talk about data until like these 3rd grade SBA scores. By then it's too late.
Yeah, thank you. I think I understand your question that you'd like to see the evidence of the efficacy of the interventions that we're doing at grades kindergarten through 3rd grade as evidence, as numbers rather than words. And I hear you on, we highlighted this year all the options at the high school. So spending more time and investing in all the things that are happening at the elementary school. The success blocks for last year in the fall were still under COVID mitigation protocols. So I think going forward this year, we'll have an opportunity to see the program come to a full year of implementation, another year of students receiving interventions through the tier 2 process and getting interventions. I also think it's true, or it's important to share that there's whenever and however it is wanted to see, there's checkpoints in the year that are natural. So the January diagnostic is a time where we can see how the students have done from September to January. Looking in arrears, the beginning of the year to the end of the year is available. We do have some of this year's data just as a teaser for next year. In the fall of this year, for all students at the elementary school level, there were 899 who were not at benchmark, and in January there's 710. So that shows 189 students move from not meeting standard to meeting standard. And we have in the program review, we do have students who are moving from not meeting standard to meeting standard, but a part that I am very excited about is watching them go from a level 1 to a level 2. So we're seeing students who were significantly behind their peers in the iReady benchmarks and taking great big steps forward by January. And an elementary school teacher might tell you that they kind of have more time from January to the end of the year to really hit their stride. So I take that note, and I will for sure make sure that we build in those pieces of efficacy of the interventions at the early grades, especially in the area of literacy.
Number 6, ensure that the instructional programs, including both content and practice, are uniformly implemented, regularly monitored, and modified as necessary to assure continuing effectiveness. So I think for me, when I look at that and what the evidence was provided, I think this really is also part of another, I think, different flavor about what our intent is with EL 12, which is grading and homework, and really trying to drive for consistent expectations and more importantly for our students and families, predictable expectations. And when I interpret this one, at least for me, it's that when it says content and practice are uniformly implemented and regularly monitored and modified, but that uniformly implemented is the key part for me. And I really think that we are far off the mark when it comes to what's uniformly implemented, particularly for our middle and high schools. And when we look at our high schools and just if you look at the data from our high schools, something is going on with our Algebra 1 scores, that there's a 20-point gap in the performance of our high school data for whether you pass it. And so again, I don't want the predictability of, oh, if you go to this high school, you have a 1 in 4 chance of not passing, versus if you go to this high school, you have a 1 in 20 chance of not passing. Those are very different odds. And that's really important to me. So I have a question about being uniformly implemented and then regularly monitored. Because if it's regularly monitored, then we should be like off the tip of our tongues from our high school principals as well as our administration on, okay, yeah, so we see this and this is the reason why, and this is what we're doing about it. And that's what I think is the point of us to pause and look and think about that. The other thing is, now that I'm a high school parent and had never had to think about these things before, is, and I actually don't go to a school that has AP classes, but now that I'm just being inundated with lots of high school parents and their conversations across our district, is there's wide variability in AP courses and this term of grade bump. And I never heard of that. And being a Skyline parent, I don't think it's even part of it. But again, that goes to what is uniformly implemented and regularly monitored. And for our students and families to have to navigate, even amongst one of our high schools, to have different grading policies or different application on whether they get an X number on their AP tests for how it impacts their final grade. And I didn't even know you could go back and change grades on transcripts. That, like, I'm still learning what even a transcript is. So pretty striking news for me to hear how widely variable that is. And so I can't imagine how stressful that must be for our teenage students who are trying to navigate their way and then learn, oh wait, there's not only these high stakes tests in May that I take for AP tests, but then it will actually impact my transcript. And then I don't know, I guess I don't understand the point of the grade bump. Like, is it to incentivize students, like, well, at least I want them to try really hard on that test, so then I look better as a teacher, that then my courses resulted in them getting X number of 4s and 5s. So I really feel like the psychology behind the grade bump is what I really want to understand. But my biggest concern is that it's so variable, and thank you for sending us that information from one of our high schools. But it's too variable for that to feel like that we're meeting this EL for number 6 in particular.
I've invited Andrea Zier, but I want to loop back after she finishes talking to get clarity on your first question, not the grade bump question, but the one before.
Andrea Zier, Executive Director of High School Education. I think these are really great questions, and I will say that AP grade bumps is a part of the EL12. I don't know if I want to call it tool or rubric that we're developing for teachers to use to monitor their growth and progress towards the kind of end destination that's set with EL12 that I teased at our high school SIP conversation that we'll be diving into at our EL12 work studies. That's in partnership with Gibson Neck and how they model their competencies at Gibson Neck. But for teachers in this case with EL12, AP grade bumps is a part of that conversation as part of our conversation around alignment within our classes. But one of the things, I guess to unpack your question around the why, AP grade bumps are only available to students in the generous direction. It would never change a student's grade for the worse. So it's never intended to be an additional stress. I do understand your point about creating an additional high stakes component to the AP test, but how they do on the AP test is credit or college credit or not credit. So there's already a lot of high stakes with that test. So I don't know if the grade bump adds a totally additional layer. I think one of the things that we've definitely communicated at our AP schools is just about really good communication with the families in their AP classes around their grade bump policies. What we've learned is that the AP test changes every year. And so teachers are hesitant sometimes to pick an AP grade bump policy and how it covers the standards in their classes because the test often looks different year to year. Sometimes the test is super narrow and there's really only one element on the test and it's more of a longer written piece that really dives into one particular topic, and other times it's more comprehensive. So often teachers want to wait until they figure out what the test is to figure it actually covers all of the College Board AP standards before they determine what impact that would have and how much of an impact on the grade. That being said, I think that we still have a lot of work to do in alignment. So if different AP teachers are having different practices for the same AP course, that's problematic. But also just making sure that communication education to our families around the why and what access that gives them to positively impact their grade. To me, it's similar to some of our EL 12 grading practices, with the final exam being a way to do like a recovery. So because learning is growth, right? And you might not have learned and demonstrated proficiency on some of the standards earlier on one assessment, but you learned more as the term progressed. AP exams is just another way to capture that. So if perhaps a student maybe demonstrated B-level work on some of the assessments in the course, but then they nailed the AP exam because they did more studying, they did more work to learn those skills and that content, then they demonstrated on the AP exam. The teachers want to honor that learning, even if it happened later after their in-class assessments. That's the reason to give them a bump positively. But there's still also teacher beliefs woven into this in terms of like, well, I've taught them for 180 days and my assessments mean more. So, and that gets into the whole other component of this, which is that this is more of an art than it is a science. And we're really talking about people's beliefs and practices. So it's complicated, but it is on our radar for part of our EL 12 work. I don't know if that totally answers your question.
No, I appreciate the dialogue. I think for me, it's fundamentally about the philosophy of our approach. So you're taking what is our best students, best lack of a better word, but students that they're going for rigor. So they are our high performing students, high achieving, whatever words you want to use. And I think we're adding unnecessary stress to them. And so the problem is like, why do they even need a grade bump? Because if we already see that the students are already performing well based on the nationally normed AP test, then why should the average in a first semester calculus class at a high school be a C? And so what my challenge to you is if in September, October, we're trying to hold our students to this is what the AP test is going to look like standard. Well, of course, they're not going to be at there in September, October. But how are we impacting them from a mental health and social emotional standpoint? And that philosophically just seems wrong to me that you would even need a grade bump. So I don't know if I'm making any sense.
No, you are.
You're taking a student that is generally, this is an A student already. And you are saying, okay, well, we're going to give you a C because this is an AP class and because you have to be ready for the AP test. And it seems like our teachers are already like, oh, you got it ready for whatever this next stage is. But I think that fundamentally is just wrong. And I would say, just having lived through that, as you go through medical school admissions. And so you take this very slice of students and then you try and put us on a curve. Already you're at the third standard deviation and you're now trying to put us on a curve. I feel like it's the same way we're doing for our AP students. So we're not doing them a service. And I think that we're, again, to what Director Maldo often talks about the currency part, I think we are distorting what is the intention of learning. And what is the intention of an AP class? It's learning, not to get a grade, not to get an AP test grade. But I think philosophically, we have distorted it such that if we need a grade bump, and that's why I'd ask is the point of like, I think if we quote need grade bumps, then we probably aren't approaching it correctly, because you already have your highest achieving students taking these courses. And part of what we're trying to do is reduce the stressors of the inputs. And if we can't do that as a system, and that we're just stressing students out, we're not doing them any favors for their future.
I hear two components potentially to bring to our EL 12 work study out of this dialogue, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the first is to what you're saying, like, why do we even need grade bumps, which is often a conversation we have in relation to like Algebra 2, and we like overlay that with like our student and district performance on like SAT and ACT, like their math performance is high. So what's with our Algebra 2 challenges with students? So unpacking that and like, what are our teacher standards compared to these other math measures? So it's similar to that. And so that's one topic. And I think the other topic is around is this creating this extra currency for students, right? Are those the two sort of areas?
Well, I don't think it's about the currency part. It's more the drive for currency that creates the stress. Like,
yes.
What are we adding? We are adding unnecessary stress as a system. onto students who are already high achieving. And I think we need to look and reflect on that as a system to say, what parts do we need to do to still get the same impact with the less negatives? Because I think we can still have the same results and have it to be less stressful for our students. Our students are already going to perform. You can put them in a closet and they're going to do well because they care that much.
I'll be curious what our students say with that, just because
Yeah,
I think.
can I share a student perspective?
Yes, just because like, I think it's going to be one of those areas, it's a super divided response from our student and parent community, just like a lot of things in terms of like whether they want that access in terms of showing their growth if they studied really hard and worked hard. And it's just another way to show, similar to allowing like a final or, unit exam to compensate for maybe an earlier in the year demonstration of proficiency. Some of them want that because if they do continue to grow and learn and be able to demonstrate that more, they want that acknowledgement in a way, and as it relates to the grade. So I'd be curious what, to hear broad input on that. But
Right. I was going to say, well, so you have two parts to this, right? You have the student grade and you have the AP test. And so, it's for my kids going through school, taking AP classes, you have the experience, this being right or wrong, but the teachers are trying to teach them this high level of this AP work. And so at the beginning, the students take the exams and they are judged on what the final form of their response to tests, as if they were taking the AP test. And so the students do tended to with very low scores on those exams. And on the one hand, you could say, well, that's bad because you're stressing them out by giving them low scores. But the flip side of that is you say, oh, well, for the beginning of the year, that's an A. That's great. The problem is if they maintain that, their grade's going to dive as they go through the year. And they're not seeing the growth that they need to make to get to the end point of where they're trying to achieve. And so I know as mine went through for a number of courses, they would do an exam, the scores would be 4. The teachers would let them do another run at it, allow them to raise the grade. As through the year, they make great strides. And by the end of the year, have the opportunity to show their overall achievement in the course and the mastery of the material, and be able to have a score on the AP test that might allow them to then have a small grade bump, right? So one of the questions would be is how many students actually need grade bumps? Because for a number of them, these teachers would also be like, there would be conditions where like your worst exam would be dropped. So again, it was showing your growth over the year to lessen some of that effect on your grade, but was with the intent of having the students understand the end result of the work they were trying to be able to show by the end of the semester. So really, how many students end up having grade bumps and how much of an impact is there? Because there were lots of students that by the end were already achieving the high A and Bs and didn't really need the grade bumps.
I love that question. It's a super small number of students that actually get grade bumps. I can get the data, but it is small, which does reflect that their actual grade is usually very representative of how they perform on the AP. So there is really good alignment with our teachers and their grade books. The number is very small. I don't have the data in front of me, but I could get that.
Yeah, that would be the important piece to tie into the discussion about grade bumps. I do think it's important that there be commonality or consistency, especially in any one school in the same subject. And maybe when my kids went through, there weren't as many courses where there were multiple teachers where I ever saw that they weren't in alignment. So I don't know if it was AP European history, there were 2 teachers. It always seemed to be pretty aligned in what they did. So it affected all the students in the same way because they followed the same policies. That is important because otherwise you have great disadvantage if you end up with the teacher that goes full bore grading as if you were taking the AP exam from day one and no relief along the way to help students. Because in the end, students do recognize that grades are important.
So if we're going to say that that's something that's valuable as far as for the demonstrating that growth and mastery, then what about the 70% of students who don't take AP classes? Why shouldn't they have that same opportunity for they demonstrate that in their final? That it doesn't go and translate into their final grade. So what I have a problem with is the equitable or inequitable access to this option. And so what about the rest of our student population who aren't AP students? And that's the heart of it for me is I can get there with everything you've said. I don't disagree with it. But then why is it only for that subsection? For some classes, it's 10% of the class takes that AP course. For some, it's 30%. But overwhelming majorities are ones who don't take the AP classes. So why don't they have that same opportunity for, hey, if they get an A on the final, they've demonstrated growth and mastery, and why is their final grade a B minus?
Right. So that would be a different question about AP versus non-AP and the effect of a final on it. But then you also have the negative, because you could overweight that final to have some effect on a stronger effect on their overall grade, but it also has the negative if they didn't score well on it. And traditionally an AP score has never been a negative bump.
That's what I'm saying, but it can only help you, but we don't have that same approach to finals that we're saying that's okay for AP, but not okay for our rest of our students. That seems
right. I don't know if in regular classes has the same significant start of a school year or the progression of where the students usually start and end in the grading, because that's where part of the grade bump is trying to make up for the grading of students from the very beginning related to where they actually expect them to be by the end.
Why would you take a pre-assessment and make it count towards your grade? That's what you're saying, is we're doing a pre-assessment and a post-assessment. And guess what? You're pre-assessment. So the farther behind you are when you start, the longer you have to grow. So what it does is it actually creates more stress for students that got maybe a C on the pretest versus the one who got an A on. If they got an A on the pretest, why are they taking the class? Well, just take the class, take your AP exam and be done. You should get the credit. If you get an A on a pretest that says at the end of the semester or the end of the year, this is what you should know, and they get an A on the very first one, they're done.
But
they should achieve the credit and be done.
Test isn't a pre-assessment of the entire course. It is the first section that they're being taught, and they're being asked to produce results. And as far as the testing questions or formats, both multiple choice and writing, which is where the students really have to grow the most, is in the writing prompts. So it's segment. So you could call every test they take a pre-test to the AP test.
I guess I'm back to Harlan of like every single student I'm expecting they're going to be growing all year long, or why are they in the class?
So there's a I don't want to interrupt. I didn't know.
So to me, it just feels you need to have a policy. It needs to be consistent. This is actually an EL 12 conversation. So to me, it's like goes back to what's the instructional program? And it seems we have this instructional program that provides you this opportunity that at the end, you can maybe make your grade better. And it made me think of back when we first had these conversations around EL 12. If you get a 60, a 70, an 80, and a 90 in a class, by the end, you've got approximately a C. If you have a 70 and a 70 and a 70 and 70, you still have a C. If you had a 90 and an 80 and a 70 and a 60, you still have a C. Like, which student do you want? I want the 60 to 70 to 80 to 90. If by the end, they fully understand what they were to have learned in the class, why are they not getting the A? Why are they still getting the C, even though we've seen growth all year long? But the other person who has just taken a nosedive, because at the beginning they felt like, hey, I know everything, and they stopped being engaging, and they end up with a C in the class. To me, I want to put programs together that have students that are encouraged to learn. And I feel like allowing some to get grade bumps and some to not, regardless of the program they're in. Our instructional program should be about growth throughout the year. And I think it's
do that anyway. I mean, you don't overweight the final, but you could say, look, if you get a really good grade on the final, we will bump you, right? The final won't hurt you, but it can help you. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you can make that work. And again, we're digressing. into-
I was gonna
Right.
say,
This is an
let me just
EL12.
share one bit, if it helps this conversation. So in our future agenda planning, we have planned 2 work studies, one on 427 and one on 511 for EL12 specifically to give us longer periods of time on these exact topics.
Sure. I just want to follow up with what Director Weaver just said, but that's my point.
Mhm.
Is that for our AP students, they get that opportunity, and for the overwhelming majority of our students who aren't AP students, they don't. And that tells me it is not uniformly implemented and accessible for all students. That's a problem.
Yeah, but to your earlier point, I don't understand why you think that the possibility of getting an AP grade bump is stressful for kids. That part I
Actually
didn't
relieves some,
understand,
that's
because
the part I was
it's
responding
only
to.
positive.
Yeah.
It can't hurt you, it can only help you. So how's that stressful?
No. It's the fact that it's a philosophy is like, hey, I'm going to go at them. I'm going to go at them hard right from the beginning because I know that I'm going to give them this carrot at the end. It's that philosophy of approach that I have a concern with.
Okay, well, that's
different.
something different. That's
That's-
teaching style.
So-
Yeah.
And so I think we're also making an assumption that there aren't courses in which the final is a positive and not a negative. So I think that's a conversation we should have in the more detail, because I know I've had that experience with my students that they have finals in non-AP courses that are net positive to their grades. So why don't we, again, with those 2 upcoming work studies, look at the actual data and how finals of whatever sort are impacting positively or negatively in that conversation. What I will ask is, since we have lots of time scheduled on that topic, if there are additional items or different items that we want to dig into on this one.
On this one?
Yes.
Yes. Number 3, ensure that the instructional program includes opportunities for students to develop talents and interests in more specialized areas. So my question is, how much choice do our students on IEPs have? I feel, and what I've heard from our community is that there's often such a challenge in doing the master schedule, and I don't ever want to dream or wish that on anyone, have to create a master schedule for high school. So I know it's not easy, but I would really like to know, do they truly, if you have an IEP, do you have choice to be able to still pursue? Like, one of the reasons why we moved to a 7-period day and did that huge investment was so students could have that opportunity for exploration, remediation, acceleration. And I really just want to know, do our special education students have as much choice as they can, granted whatever IEP restrictions they may have to need more support in a particular subject area, but nonetheless, we want them to have more breadth and access to find out what their passion is and pursue that.
Well, Dr. Gallinger, this is a great question because I think it really articulates support for both the 7-period day and our work on inclusive practices. So when our students who are served in our special ed programs are receiving SDI and they're in an inclusive model for some of their SDI classes, depending on the areas in which they qualify. So let's just say perhaps a student who receives SDI for math. They might be in an inclusive math class where they're taking geometry and they're getting their SDI in their geometry class. And then they have the same exact 7 periods of electives to take. So that is one great support for our push and work on making our schools more inclusive for our programs there. The other is the 7-period day. So if a student and their family through the IEP process is having the option to receive their SDI in a sheltered class, perhaps a math class that is not an inclusive model, then their math class would be in place of like a geometry. And perhaps like in addition, they might have like a learning strategies class, and that would be one of their 7 periods. They still have an additional period outside of our, core 24 classes like math, science, social studies to give them elective. So your question leads to really a lot of support for a 7-period day, as well as our work with inclusion. That being said, whenever a student who's served with special ed is designing their 7-period day, it's done in conversation with the IEP team and where the student and the parents have a voice in that, which gives them lots of elective choices. The only other thing that I think I would add, unless you want to add, is that when we were talking about this earlier with Director Moore, when we create our course schedules, or what used to previously be considered a master schedule, but we call them course schedules now, we do what's called a conflict matrix, where we look at all students in the school, anyone who's served with an IEP or otherwise, every student, and what classes they want to take. And if those classes are only offered once a day, which is what we call our singleton classes, so like Japanese 3, there's only one section of that because there's only 30 kids who take Japanese 3, as well as concert band, okay? We look at how many students want to take both of those classes, and they're only offered once a day, and we try to make sure that they're not offered the same period so that a student can take both. Because if both of those were, let's say, third period, and a student wanted to take both, they couldn't take both of them, so then they would have less choice in their day. And so when we do that conflict matrix, we prioritize and we look at all of our students who are served with IEPs before we look at the whole school, because some of our classes that are designed for our students with special ed services are often singletons. We do that to make sure that their electives are open to them, so that there's still as much choice as possible and as many electives that are open and available to them in their 7-period day.
How do you address that at Skyline when the classes are blocked in grades 9, 10, and 11? And so you have a student who may want to take, let's say, certain social studies elective, but they can't because of the block scheduling, or they may have interventional needs only in one subject, and they feel like they can't on a 7-period day with a block schedule. I think that adds a specific unique challenge to the master scheduling. And so hearing from Skyline families that there's a particular challenge there, that 7 divided by 2 doesn't give you an even number in ways that no other high school in our district is challenged by.
Sure. So if I understand the question correctly, we have been asking the counseling team to provide data to show where those conflicts arise for students who are served with IEPs, like how the block goes into it, because they also get the choice of split block or block, with the exception of honors and IB classes, because the number of students who elect to take split block who are also honors and IB is too small to run a full section when we offer those classes. So almost all the students at Skyline High School choose whether they prefer split block or block, which then creates openings in their schedule to do the schedule any which way, whether it's blocked or non-blocked humanities. I have yet to see data from that team that prevents students from getting electives that they want based on the blocking, but I would definitely be open to looking at that data and seeing what we can do to problem solve that if their data is out there.
Shreen Carver, Executive Director of Special Services. There's only 2 additional pieces that I would add is we're expanding our focus on inclusive practices. One of the things is we're really been intentionally focusing on co-teaching, but we're expanding inclusive practices to really also look at how we can use what's called a teaming and consultative model of delivering SDI in inclusive settings, which would also free up schedules when we're looking at what does it look like in terms of co-taught and different course offerings. So there's that piece that I wanted to hit on. And one other piece, I know one factor that's really been impacting some students and access to electives is related to learning strategies and receiving SDI for executive functioning, social emotional skills, and behavior. And so again, as we start looking at inclusive practices, is thinking about what does that look like in terms of co-taught for guided studies? So either co-taught and guided studies in place of a learning strategies, or if a student really is saying, I have some targeted areas I need to work on, but a whole separate course isn't going to work for me. I want to access and participate in my passion area. We're going to support you in other areas. Make sure you get your SDI, but do it in a different way. So we're really trying to expand the continuum to ensure students have access to what they need. Anything else? Thank you.
Additional questions before we close out on this one?
I just had some, and this is probably going to be Elena. So there was a link to our equity framework for supplemental curriculum. And in going through that, there are a lot of good things that are talked about, and especially notes, whether or not these criteria have been met. I was just really actually surprised, though, under religion, though, there's only 3 items, and they don't have a lot of some of the good languages that is in other ones, such as resource infuses perspectives and contributions from members that are accurate and respectful. That would be great to have under a religious context, or shows individuals with character traits such as courage, leadership, intelligence, integrity. So I think there's ways to infuse some of these other things under the religious context of if religion is mentioned within a text or a book study or a unit, that some of those other questions can be integrated into criteria under religion that are there for some of the other groups that I think are really good things. Resources avoid using stereotype language. I think there's some more abundant criteria that I would like to see under that, rather than just that the resources are being used and discussed or vetted with religious organizations, written by a member of the religious community, and full scope and well-rounded picture of the religion. So I think that really that's not very deep. And the other ones I feel like are much more deep if we're going to be doing that equity work, to include some of that language.
Thank you, Elena Sivadas, Executive Director of Equity. I appreciate your feedback. I think our hope was, right, if they're working with the religious organization and it's that organization that is providing the curriculum, that it would be inclusive of all those other pieces that you are talking about, and not that we couldn't notate that on the framework or that piece, but that was really the one piece where we were specific about this is not something that that we would encourage staff to make up on their own, but to be getting that information from the religious organization itself. I'll take a look at the framework as well. There's a couple pieces that you mentioned that I thought we had included in the framework, especially about not presenting one aspect of a religion as like the full aspect of the religion. One thing that comes to mind for us was when we were working with our Muslim partners was that piece, because that has been a misstep for us in the past in the district. But that's good feedback. We could think about incorporating some of those other pieces. And there might be some things in the look fors that we could pull up into the actual rubric.
And that's especially because we know that it's another group that's creating that may not necessarily be educators looking for that I just think including some of that same language of what we want to look for and as we're vetting supplemental materials.
Yep. Thank you.
And then I had another random question that's from earlier. It mentions WANIC in here as far as options for students, but I don't know how many students are actually taking advantage of non-ISD WANIC classes. Because as we start talking about high school programming and things like that, because I know there's an interest, I think for us, it's really going to be about, are kids even accessing WANIC programs and to what extent?
I did get that information from Director Lisa Neighbors. I didn't include it because it was a long list. It's actually a big number, but I'm happy to get that for you. I have it on my computer. I just don't have it up here.
Great, thank you.
Any others? Okay, well, thank you for that update. We have no more students. We called for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor, so I'll move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against?
Nay.
Thank you. So it passes 4-1. Thank you. Okay, with that, we will move on to legislative matters. Director Gallagher, any update from you?
I asked staff today, now that the Senate budget has been released, to calculate for us as a board, since we can continue our advocacy on what the impact is going to be with the multiplier for next year only, as outlined by the Senate bill versus the House bill. So that will be helpful. And then we will work to meet with Representative Bergquist, who is one of the ranking members on the House appropriations, which is going to be a big hurdle for the Senate bill 5311 to get through. There was specific language that we're working on for sample letters that I'm working on generating for other large school districts like ours. Of the 7 ranking members, 5 are in King County, 2 are in Eastern Washington. And so wanted to just read through some of the language, because I would like for us to be able to have a letter that's generated from our board that's signed by the board president, as well as with or without the legislative representative. But let me just find that for you. It's really just asking for support of this bill, and I have lost it. But while I'm looking for that, I don't know if Marnie has any other updates as well from a local or national.
I do not. So sorry.
She said that slowly.
Well, I guess I could say that the House Committee on something, Oversight Committee, Judicial Committee, is looking at the judiciary, is looking at NSBA and its little letter and how that impacted the Attorney General. So that's going to be happening. That will be fun. I think that started today. I didn't watch.
I know where I put it. I will have to find it and do it later. I don't want to take up any more time.
Okay, we can certainly share it by email and do it that way. Thank you. Any other topics? Legislative? Awesome. Thank you. Next, we have announcements and correspondence. Correspondence has been included in the agenda. Are there any additional items that board members wanted to share at this time? Anything else? Okay, wonderful. We'll move on to calendaring. I actually have a fair number in calendaring. So maybe 4 or 5 items I want to go through. So earlier we had the invitation to high school graduations. I don't know if we wanted to take this opportunity to determine board speakers at those ceremonies.
Speakers or acceptors?
Acceptors. I guess we're not, well,
That was my
that's a great
question too.
question.
Not like speech, just acceptor?
The last 2 years it's been acceptors. Actually, don't know if that's different.
I vote for that.
That's a great question. So we should get clarity on what the format will be this year. I know I've had the great honor of all the past 4 years, so I'm happy to sit out this year. But I don't know if we want to divvy that up tonight or wait until we have clarity on whether we're speaking or accepting to do so.
We're do you have an answer? You don't know.
And our
Andrea
head of high
left.
schools has left, so we can find that out and then come back and divvy that one up. But no, we'll do that. Let's try to wrap that up, I guess, next meeting, so we know who will be a part of the ceremony at each of our high school graduations. Next, so in preparation, we do have fall elections, school board director elections this year. And so we do have a couple of pieces of business to do in preparation for that. One is an update of our school board directors handbook, and the other is for 2 board members to host the informational session that would happen with the public to share the role and answer questions about the role of the school board. So was hoping we could throw that out for which of the existing board would be open to taking on those two tasks in preparation for election.
Well, I'll start by saying that I would volunteer to do both the handbook and the school director info night, because earlier this year I decided that I would not run again. And so that would make me eligible to do the board info night, because I will not be seeking reelection.
Okay.
Right, because normally we,
You
it's only
wouldn't.
the people who are not in the upcoming election that do the information session. And I would be happy to do that with you for exactly the same reason.
Now, if anybody else wanted to volunteer and do
I was
it
gonna
as
say,
well,
no,
you're
thank
free to
you.
do it.
Normally it would be you and Sydney, and we just kind of thought you guys seemed busy.
Right.
I will first share my deep and personal disappointment that both of you have decided to not move forward and run again for the school board. It's been a great joy of my last 4 years to work with you, and also accept your gracious offer to take on this task on behalf of the two of us who are not running for election this year, Director Moraldo and myself. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been an amazing run for my 12 and your 17 years.
Yeah, it's time.
It's time.
It's time for new blood.
That's when we go.
I'll be the longest serving board member. That is
Be the
scary.
longest serving board member.
No, not ever.
Well,
Well, no, as
Well,
far as at the
right now,
time. So once you're done,
once you're done, yes.
come December, I'll be the longest serving board member.
You'll have to get another senior, quote unquote, board member. It'll be you.
Yes, yeah, that's what she
Well,
said.
technically, I'll be a senior too. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Hey, did we want to, since we're so efficient, did we want to go ahead and calendar that?
Yeah, traditionally, we've done it at the end of April.
Yes.
So, and we want to make sure we're doing it, past spring break but well before the filing time. So people have the opportunity to come and we can advertise. I was going to throw out April 24th and see if that worked.
I can do that.
And then we can work with Diane and all to find a location. We usually do it kind of in the middle, and then we'll put it out and advertise that date, and we could go forward with that.
Yeah, and for the record, if we didn't already say it, filing week begins May 15th. So it's May 15th through 19th. If you're planning to
Yes.
run for, is it 1, 3?
Well,
and
I'm
5?
1
I'm 5.
and 3.
Arlen's 3.
3.
Okay, so
So-
1, 3, and 5 are up for election. So if you live in one of those districts and are thinking about running in the fall, you would need to file with King County between May 15th and May 19th. And you might well want to come to our
Info night.
incredibly interesting
Right.
information session on April 24th.
Right. And if
Probably
anyone,
7-ish.
if anyone who's listening doesn't know where they live within the geographic boundaries,
We have maps.
we have maps, and they could reach out to Diane Gambari, and she would be able to help them know where they are on the map, to know, because you have to live in the director area space to run for that seat. So for example, I live in Director Area 1, and you must live within that geographic space to run for that seat, and you cannot run for any other seat. And that's all the kind of information that we'll share when at the school board info night, as
preview.
well as what the board does and the role of the board.
Thank you for that. And I, again, was at a information night that the two of you hosted together. So we know that you're good at it. You've done it before. So thank you. Thank you for that. And we will look to formally calendar April 24th for that session. 24th, you did say 24th.
Yes.
Okay.
Monday, April 24th.
I did not write it down.
Did we volunteer to do the handbook?
You did.
We own that handbook.
We own that handbook.
Did it. We're gonna update it. I don't think it's gonna take a lot to update it. And then we'll have it ready for the school board information night, so that helps share the role of the school board and the responsibilities of a school director.
Yeah, I think the biggest changes will be around our student reps.
Yes, that will be in
Yes.
there. Mhm.
Awesome, thank you. Next I have up is we need to schedule our dates for superintendent evaluation. We've traditionally done 2 of those between May and early June. I looked back to 2021, which is the last time we did it, and we had May 6th and June 3rd. If we can see if by magic we could land on something tonight, or we can move that to a survey as well. But if maybe tonight we know if there's days that we know, days or weeks that we know may not work in that time frame, that would be helpful to get us to narrow in a little bit.
And let's see, I know like the first week of May is good. If we could, for our first meeting,
So May 1 through 5.
yeah,
That's what you're thinking?
if there are any of those that work for this grand group.
I can do any of those.
Good.
I have
I'm
no
sure the
life.
venue.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I'm the venue.
Bless you.
That Thursday, I have a meeting that from 4:30 to 6. So as long as it was after that.
So do you have
That
any of
sounds
those days,
painful.
Harlan?
You want to go from a 6-hour meeting to a 3-hour meeting?
4:30 to 6. He said.
Oh, I thought she said 12:30.
We're in the first
Oh.
week of, we're in the first
Oh,
week
that
of
was the
May.
4th.
First week of May.
So we'd have to do it. But I mean, is any of those days, that was the only time I had anything in the evenings.
I'm available the 2nd and the 4th.
You're about the 2nd and the 4th. I can do the 2nd for sure. The 4th. Or the 4th. So, Director Moraldo, would you like to avoid that 4th, just so you have?
You know, I mean, I'm already going to be, I think our meetings are here. My meeting is here, I think, if I remember to reserve the room. So
Okay,
it would be
shall
fine to
we
be,
Go with May the 4th?
yeah, if we started like at 6:30.
Okay. We're doing great.
Yeah, this is too easy. Something's
Yeah.
gonna go wrong.
I think the second one.
Okay, the second one, do you want to try last week of May or maybe first week of June?
Well, 29th of May is Memorial Day, so probably
No.
not then.
Well, right. And
good.
unfortunately, I wouldn't be available and if we're in June until, well, I'll be here for the June 8th board meeting, but would have to be the next week. I
What
don't know if
about-
that's too
That's
late
too
in
late.
June.
That's too late.
What about the 31st of the 1st or?
No. How about? Oh, sorry, we said May 4th.
May 4th?
May 4th.
Yes, we'll try 6:30. May 4th,
Yeah.
6:30.
I'm available through the 10th, but that doesn't, there's not much time between the 4th and the 10th.
You're available.
I'm sorry, what?
Where did you go?
Well, you said, I was pushing this out too far in June, but
Would the week of the 22nd of May, would that be too soon?
Whoever's gonna turn around
Any-
the thing. If
Oh,
you can turn
that
it
would-
around
that-
in
that
3
seems
weeks,
pretty good.
That would probably be you. So it's
Yeah,
up to you if that's too early.
Why was, I didn't miss, I missed it. The last week of May is not good for people. Is that what I heard?
Not
Yeah.
looking for Anne.
not,
Oh.
not the week of the 29th, but May 22nd works. Let's see, right? This has gotten so
Oh, we have a board meeting on the 24th.
Right,
That's the one that moved.
right.
Why did it move again? I know I asked at the last meeting. Okay,
Heather's out
oh,
of
that's
town.
right. I'm like, because I don't have anything else on my calendar and then I
Right.
freak out like, am I, what does it mean? It's more that I'm worried that I have something that's
Right.
supposed to be on my calendar and it's not.
Monday, the 22nd? How would that look for folks?
No.
No.
No,
How about the
no.
23rd?
I could do the 23rd. It's the only day I could do that week.
Anybody, I can do the 23rd. Anybody else?
The 23rd.
23rd is ISF, but I could be there by like a 6:30 again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
On the 23rd? Okay, May 23rd,
Okay, so May 4th and May
May
23rd.
4th and May 23rd, yeah.
Would you like motions?
Yeah.
30, I would.
Okay, I move that we establish an executive session for the purpose of superintendent evaluation on May 4th from 6:30 to 9:30 and on May 23rd from 6:30 to 9:30 at my house.
Second.
Wonderful. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Hopefully not after that. Great. Okay, those are our 2 dates.
Okay.
We
That
got,
was-
and then we have one last one I'll bring up from a counting perspective, which is, yes. So on March 30th, we have an invitation for the state of the city, for the city of Issaquah. You, superintendent, are speaking at that one. On that date, I will be in attendance. I'm the Issaquah resident, so I will be there for sure, but also sharing with the rest of the board and see if anyone else is interested or available to attend at that time.
I think I already signed up.
I cannot.
Already signed up.
You ready?
And I can't.
So
I'll
there
be
will
in
be 3 of
Orlando.
you.
So there will be 3 of us. It's
So
public.
that just needs to be posted, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just an assembly of the board.
Yeah.
And this, we're assembling.
Scrupulously?
No, I'm just saying, but
Any other calendar items that we want to cover?
I had one just note around some further work to communicate to the community on EL 12, given the discussion level and also the work studies coming up, that we can schedule that for after those work studies conclude. Unless there's feedback on that, but that's something we wanted to put forward and consider, given that we have work studies coming up for EL 12.
Right, because we had to talk about shooting a video and other communication devices, more about what's the go for it on EL 12. So post work study sessions, we'll bring that
Oh,
back
okay, so the thing we were supposed to do this month, we're now going to do after the work studies.
after the work studies, after, in case we have
Perfect. Okay,
anything else we want to do.
perfect.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Okay, anything else? Without that, we're adjourned.